Hey everyone, it's time for the Sunday comic book talk show. It's something we do every week, in case you didn't know. It happens every Sunday morning, but I guess that part is pretty clear. If you think that we are negative, we promise we are totally sincere. It's the Sunday morning comic book talk show, and here we go. Let's go!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sunday morning comic book talk show. And as you can see by the banner, we're going to be talking about the DC Comics August Solicits. We'll go through some of the solicits, see what's coming out in August, some things, happening. You end up with Hush 2 ending and a couple new books. I do think that they're going to do some sort of wholesale change type thing in September with Batman coming out with a new #1. I think that a bunch of books may end up, going to #1s. Things like Batman and Robin, Green Arrow. Maybe that is why they didn't end up doing anything with new #1s when you had Philip Kenny Johnson or Chris Condon jump on, which kind of hampered the sales. In my mind, it seems as if a lot of people still don't know, especially the Batman and Robin with Philip Kenny Johnson. I had somebody this week who is a Philip Kenny Johnson fan, and they had no idea that he was on Batman and Robin. It may seem silly to some people, but if you're just there and, you have your pull list, you're not checking out news items or, whatever. And a lot of people, even with the play of not having, comic shops near them, a lot of comic shops are closing, and you're just relying on maybe ordering things or getting them digital or whatever. There may be people who don't have that guiding hand that tells them, oh, by the way, and some people, even in the shop, you just go in and grab your stuff, and suddenly, you haven't been reading a Batman and Robin, you may have dropped it, and then how would you know? Again, I think that people listening and watching right now, and in the Get Fresh crew, are more learned. They know what's going on. They keep up with it. But that's not just the general public. The general public, a lot of times, does seem to be a bit behind on, the workings. But if they see a new #1, that's going to get their eye, and then see that it's Philip Kenny Johnson. That's a pretty cool deal. But that's what all of us are here for. We're here to tell people when things change or things are good, even though it seems as if what gets centered on, even when you're just here talking, you get centered on that you're negative, and maybe you're giving bad reviews to things because you have a fight with somebody online, because that's what I was accused of just yesterday for why I don't like Dan Waters' Dark Patterns. I don't like it because I think the book's a bunch of hooey, and this last issue was a bunch of hooey, and I'm not going to get fully into it, but we did review it on our podcast, and at the end of the issue, I was so frustrated with the hand-waving and forced jumping to conclusions that Batman did. I mean, we saw him jump off the moon, yet I think he was worse jumping to conclusions in this past issue that I dropped the book. I'm done with it. I'm never going to review it again, and yeah, I'm not going to look back, and even said at the end of the review on the podcast, basically, people who like it, why do they want to hear me bitch and moan about it? So I'm done with it. So this is me getting it off my chest for the deal. But in the meantime, just to put it out there, I'm not going to end up where I give something a bad review because, quote unquote, I fought with people online. The only reason that any creator even gets a hold of me is usually they want to fight with me because I gave something a bad review. And that doesn't even happen that much anymore because I don't do written reviews. And there's so many podcasts and so many videos and things like that that I don't think the creators end up really noticing a lot of those. What they notice is they go to the comic book roundup and see that 5 people gave their book a 9, and then somebody who's sensible gave it a 5, and then they end up attacking that. Again, I ended up getting in a fight a bit with Ram V, but that doesn't mean that last week I didn't give Resurrection Man one of the highest scores I've given in quite some time because that book's awesome. I just wasn't liking his Detective Comics, and this was at the beginning where suddenly at the end, a lot of people agreed with me. So there you go. There you go. And J.K. said he heard that it was a good ventriloquist story. I disagree completely, and just people who read it and disagree with me, please go reread the jumping to conclusions that Batman gets from looking at an apartment that has old but well-kept furniture. And he goes from that to then saying that from that he ascertains that this guy must have gotten punked and pranked by people who ding-dong ditched him so that he'd believe that ventriloquist was real. Plus also, there's ghosts in the building that end up being let go through the smoke of a fire as everybody kind of dies. But yeah, DC. And yeah, DC was begging. They were begging the wrong person. But I'm looking at the live chat right now. Yeah, and Brandon said that I have been pretty positive on DC lately. And this week ended up having 2 books that I gave 9 out of 10. And one of them may be written by Morgan Hampton, a guy that I don't necessarily love. I didn't like his Cyborg stuff, and I haven't liked a lot of the other things. He had a Jon Stewart backup recently that I didn't like. But boy, that Green Lantern Corps book is great. And Aquaman is incredible. It was so good. That Aquaman having Nemo involved was so good. I ended up giving, I think I gave that on the podcast a 9 and maybe a 9.3. Or maybe it was one of those. I think that I ended up going above a 9, but I know that I gave him at least 9s, Green Lantern Corps and Aquaman. And then we also talked about the deal, and Brandon said he's the world's greatest detective. He can do everything except figure out that Hush was Tom. This is the thing. When people end up getting upset about Bat God, you know, he's jumping off a moon. That's completely ridiculous. But you can say, okay, that's bad. But when you're doing detective work, and then suddenly at the end of these 2 arcs in that Dark Patterns, he's either being handed the info or this one, he jumps to so much conclusions. I think he pulled a hammy. He's on the injured reserve. Holy moly. And yeah, 2 9 out of 10s. And the Resurrection Man, I gave a 9.3 last week. So I think that DC is in a really good spot right now. And I think that a lot of people who are kind of on the side saying, oh, I'll never read DC, I don't read DC, there's some books that you could definitely give a shot, and I think that you'll enjoy them. Not everything, that's why a lot of times when I talk to some people, I really tend to go a little overboard when people give things blanket statements. Oh, and catchphrases. Again, I'm talking about the idea of like woke and that nonsense. Like if you say to me, if I'm talking to you and I say, oh, do you read any DC? No way. They're completely woke. Then what am I going to talk to you about? What is there to talk about? Because that's such a general statement. What am I going to come back and, no, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. And yeah, it ends up where, but if you say to me, hey, I don't like, I'm trying to think about, I don't like Batman and Robin as much as you, Jim, because the pacing is off. And I really don't like the idea that Batman has been tripping balls for months. Then we have a discussion. You know, really, when you come at people with catchphrases and things like that, you're not trying to talk to somebody. You're legit. And you can argue with me because, again, when you say, oh, they're this or that, you're just trying to argue. You are just trying to say, I don't care individually. We're not going to discuss things. I just want to argue with you about a general statement. I don't have time for that. Now, I'll argue. Again, I was arguing with a couple of people in the comments about Dark Patterns. I'll argue till the day, is done with something that I feel whatever. But I'm not arguing also saying that you can't like it. It's just when I end up saying I don't like a book and then somebody's like, man, I like it, then I'll start, talking about it. But yeah, the general statement stuff, it just gets me. And that's one of the reasons why for a while, I wasn't even doing things on YouTube. YouTube really seems to be centered on that. But again, I'm not going to say that I like channels or videos where they pretend that everything's great. That it's like, "Oh, man, that's the same thing. That's the opposite. That's the opposite, but equally bad. Oh, man, everything's great." Everything's not great. And as I say, as we go into these solicits, because I'll probably have some commentary on some of them, I look at comics like I look at everything else that I love, and that means pretty much sports. The Eagles, I love the Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles, my favorite team all time. Love them. Will support them till the day I die, which might be next week. But the idea is I'm also probably one of the most critical people with the Eagles. But then again, if somebody comes up, say I'm like, man, the Eagles, they suck today. Oh my God, they're so bad. Why doesn't Jalen Hurts end up doing this? He's got to get rid of the ball quicker or whatever. And then a Dallas Cowboy fan says to me, I know they suck. Then them's fighting words. It's the same. It almost feels like when you have family. When you have family and you could sit there and say, oh my God, my brother's the biggest jerk ever. I hate the guy, whatever. And then somebody goes, yeah, he is a jerk. Then the fighting words. And that's how I kind of go with the comics. But again, if you want to argue, I don't mind arguing. I never think of arguing as being mad at somebody. I like to argue. I look at it as, maybe we're doing like a court case or something. You don't have to be angry about it. You just kind of discuss things, and it might get heated or whatnot. But at the end of the day, I like talking about stuff like that. But in the meantime, again, these blanket statements, and usually when somebody says to me, hey, everything's this or everything's that, or they have these writers that are this, that, and the other thing. And then I kind of push them out. Oh, well, do you read Aquaman? That's really good. Oh, I haven't read DC in 20 years. Oh, okay. That's great. That is great. Oh my goodness. So yeah, there's some issues with it. And this is just, this kind of comes out just because right before I was, going in the comments, and it was in the Absolute Batman deal where a lot of people aren't liking it as much as me, but that's fine as well. But I think that Gray was kind of shocked that I only gave it an 8. I thought he thought I was going to go a little bit higher. But as Brandon will tell you, I'm telling you, my radar is all discombobulated when I end up talking about the Absolute books, because I end up like, at points I really feel like I don't like something, but then at the end I do like it and recognize it's different, but all the scores Brandon has to be there and man the wall and tell me like, hey, he's like the voice on my shoulder. Hey, Jim, you really were a little more negative than a 6. I'm like, yep, you're right. I better go and change that score. But I am going to go to the comments, and there was some talk earlier about Hush 2 and will Alfred return and Robin die. I don't think Damien's going to die, though. If he did, it would be the idea of maybe that's why that story is getting drawn out. But I think Alfred's going to return. I've said that from the beginning, and my whole play of that is, if you read the original Hush, I'm gonna play act it. I'm gonna do some scenes here from back in my Shakespeare in the Park days. Batman in the original Hush was, it's not Tommy Elliot. It's not Tommy Elliot. Oh shit, it's Tommy Elliot. And that's how the whole thing went. There was not much more to it than that. Now suddenly you get Hush 2 and it's Tommy Elliot. And I think at the end, oh shit, it's not Tommy Elliot. I do think it's weird though to think that Alfred would come back maybe a little bit crazed up from a Lazarus Pit type deal or whatever, to be the play of, being the villain. Or at least trying to show Batman, hey, you did let people die. You did let Jason Todd die. Remember, in the original Hush, you did end up having what Batman thought was Jason Todd coming back. It was Clayface, but that kind of led to Jason Todd coming back. So I do think that Alfred will return. I just don't know how. And I think that would be more in a cliffhanger at the very end to then mold into Matt Fraction's Batman. But we'll see. We'll see what the solicits for Batman are when the September stuff comes. Also said, wonder how they will handle the Robin situation. I don't know. But Damien's already died. I would think that they wouldn't go to that well again, but I would think that what they were more pushing for was him quitting, but I don't think that's happening either. And Brandon says the Get Fresh crew knows when to avoid fartacular books and when to go all in on Green Lantern Corps. And that is true. But again, just to point out, and again, I don't want to sit here and say that this show is for me to defend myself, but we reviewed the fartacular book. We'll review anything. Anybody who gets a hold of me and whenever things come out, I'll review the stuff because I'd rather sit there and say, boy, that fartacular book was terrible, but I want to know that it was. I want to be able to tell you. You know why I think, and I'll tell you right now, and I did the review, why I think the Harley Quinn fartacular book was bad? Not because I think it was a fetish book. Not because I think that it was woke. Not because I think of all that. It was bad. Lo and behold, there weren't enough good fart jokes in it. That's 100% why that book wasn't that good. It was too long and wasn't funny. There you go. And when you end up having writers who people say, oh my God, and I'll just name some, just to name them, but it's what you hear. Jedzia Axelrod. Oh my God, this Jedzia Axelrod's so bad, this, that, and the other thing. Oh my God. But in the meantime, I sit back and say, eventually, sometimes in the current phase, and maybe even a couple years ago, it did take a little bit longer for the cream to rise and the rest to be cast aside. But it eventually happens. It eventually happens because bad writers end up not selling books. Some good writers end up not selling books, unfortunately. But bad writers don't sell books. And eventually that's where it matters. And you'll end up having DC especially. I don't know. Marvel seems to really keep a hold because also just remember there's not a lot of writers out there. There's not a lot of great writers. There's not a lot of good writers. So you have to fill some spaces. Marvel seems to be very much more in the line of we need this amount of books because as Tom Brevoort said, the bean counters demand it. So a lot of times that will keep some bad writers around. But in the meantime, really bad writers end up, disappearing. T. Franklin. I don't think we're going to hear a lot about T. Franklin ever being on a major book because she's terrible. And you have a bunch of writers like that. You just have to wait it out. You don't have to get too angry. You just do what everybody else does. They don't buy their books because they're not good. I'll be here to review most of them, and I'll tell you why they're bad. Again, certain things, and this could be one of the shows down the line of, hey, let's end up where we will do a deal where I'll go through books that are some of the worst, and I'll give you the real reasons why they stink. Again, there's reasons beyond just the surface level deal of why Tim Drake Robin by Megan Fitzmartin was bad. And I'll tell you it was because of bad writing, really bad characterization, even behind or beyond the idea that you ended up having Tim Drake being by. The thing is, when Tim Drake by, a lot of people are going to step away. That's fine. That's their prerogative, just like Bobby Brown. But in the meantime, if you do have people who want to read it, they went to read that book, it stunk. But then some people end up saying, see, it's never going to work because of this. That book was terrible. I believe if Mark Miller ended up writing that book, it'd be great. And people would be like, okay, I see what's going on, stuff like that. But there's some really bad writers out there, and there's not a lot of new good ones to fill the spots. And I'll tell you why that is. I'm sure that nobody's going to argue with that. But you know what the telltale sign is? And everybody in the chat right now, I know we've all been guilty of this, right? How many books have you said, I want Jeremy Adams to write? There's probably 15 because there's nobody else. Or even if you like Philip Kennedy Johnson, you want Phil. It ended up with Jed MacKay. Oh, the minute Jed MacKay started hitting with Moon Knight, everybody wanted Jed MacKay to write everything. And then he started doing that, and lo and behold, he might have bit off more than he can chew, because that's not the type. I don't think that he's that type of writer to do an event. And that Blood Hunt was terrible. I still like Jed MacKay. I think Fist of Khonshu is pretty cool. I really liked his Black Cat. But what happens is you end up elevating writers before they're ready. You end up stretching up. Look at Joshua Williamson. At one point, so many people left DC and there weren't any good writers to kind of take the place. Joshua Williamson ended up on 17 books and then ended up eventually saying, I need to back off from some of these books. I'm on too many. But it's because who else is going to write them? And yeah, I think that, like I said, I think that talking with people and me as well, when you end up having this play of, oh my God, there's good writers, they just can't, whatever. But why then are we all yelling that these specific 5 writers, we want them on everything? And then when they're on everything, some people, get upset and whatnot, and then they don't like them for other reasons. But there's a reason why a lot of Marvel people are coming over to DC, because DC's wooing them and whatever, but you got to find writers, and there's not many new ones. I actually, for my deal, I really want Donny Cates to come back, and I really wish that Donny Cates would do an Absolute book to start out. I think that an Absolute book, he was going to do Ultimate stuff, they said, but he kind of burned Marvel when he went a little wacky. But the idea is, I would like him to start on something like an Absolute book, an Absolute Aquaman, or an Absolute Green Arrow, or whatever you would want in the Absolute line. And then from there, move into some other things, because I think you have room to play. There's wiggle room when you do that, Elseworlds or other universe stuff. But I'm still looking at the chat now. You have DC begging for Dark Patterns coverage. Yep, they did send out an email really pushing that next arc, because I think things tailed off after the first one, The Hurt Man, which again, really interesting idea. I thought that the art didn't play it out very well, and also it kind of ended, it ended with a thud. You kind of end up, I bet that people who even like the book kind of, hey, how did that end? Yeah, I don't know. And they found the village, and they did this and that, but you end up where, yeah, we're going to have to call Ghostbusters, says Kane. Yeah, hushes Tommy. And going down, Batman and Robin has had great writing and art, but the Damian characterization has been off for me. The last issue was the strongest in the run for me. I thought the last issue was okay. I liked it, but I still think there's no reason that this should be like a 12 to 13 issue arc. Damian was kidnapped. At one point, first off, Batman has to go and stop tripping balls. He's got to get to the Batcave, give himself, he's done this a million times, where he's given himself a transfusion, take some blood samples, and get Dick Grayson on the case. Get him to figure out what's going on with the Gravedigger's Poppy. But in the meantime, I think this thing is dragging and dragging, and we didn't even get Damian pretty much until the end. And I like it. It's still it was my favorite book. It's now probably tied with Green Lantern Corps. But boy, yeah, there's trouble. Brandon says, yeah, I hate things in the Slack. That is true. If you're on the Patreon, of our Patreon, we have the Slack chat that we talk about. I often think that I have to come in and calm people down. They're getting too excited about things. I'm the one who calms them down. I end up killing all the fun. And then JK says, I haven't tried the Absolute line. Too many continuities for me. To me, there's 2. I mean, and really, the main problem with continuity is definitely in the main books, where every book ends up just deciding to do their own thing. Supergirl this week was one of the examples where you do have a continuity in place, and then when people come in, Leah Williams said it when she did Power Girl. She looked into things, she ended up doing some research, and then they told her, why are you doing that? And I say they, it's Brittany Holzer, the editor, who seems to just say, oh, I don't know continuity, so why should you just go and do things? Leah Williams then went on Twitter and said, hey, all my Marvel friends, come over to DC. They don't give a shit about anything. And the Supergirl book was good. And I had a theory, that was one of our Patreon Spotlight books, that the villain is actually a very, very classic villain that ends up doing the exact thing that she does here, impersonating Supergirl. And I think I'm spot on 100%. And that's kind of cool. But it was weird. Sophie Campbell ended up where most of the book was, hey, everybody, look, I know Supergirl. You had all these references that did not really push the story forward at all. And also, if you notice, if you read it, you'll see that most of the thought bubbles were more of her just thinking about past things that could have been like editor's notes and things like that. It was very odd, but it was okay. It was okay. And Brandon says the tone it down in the then tone it down in the stream. That's what you have to do. See, this is where you fool people that you're nice. They say now is the end of Hush 2 Part 1. Yeah, it is. It's going to come back in a year. It's a weird deal. It's very weird. And JK says, I don't want bad Alfred. That'd be so dirty. He came back as the outsider at the one point. But again, you could play the idea that he just came out of Lazarus Pit. He's being controlled maybe by the ghost of Ra's al Ghul, who still might be hanging out with Flatline. I don't know. But yeah, that's the deal. Damien's died a bunch of times. The big time, though, was when Talia ended up having the heretic kill him. He was gone for a while, and Batman went through heaven and hell to go get him back. Ended up with the whole apocalyptic crazy bat hell suit, all that stuff going on back in the day. I just don't think you'd go to that well again. And if Alfred's going to come back, I think you would want Damien there, because Damien should have been the most affected by it. He saw him die. Dungeon Crawler Carl says, wasn't it supposed to have a part in a different imprint? I don't know what he means, but I'd have to see. Yes, and I am willing to make my eyes water, Lane. I am. I like the Mind movies. And War Habit says, I have zero interest in the Absolute Universe. It was at least published in... If it was at least published in Heavy Metal Magazine where it belongs, we would get some TNA. Yeah, I like it. I really like the Wonder Woman. And again, why do people like the Ultimate Universe over at Marvel? It's because mainly they get a Spider-Man book that has Peter and his family, and then they ended up reading some of the others. I'm done with it. The Ultimate deal, that is boring to me. It ends up really like treading water. I'm still reading and reviewing Ultimate X-Men, but even that, I don't think I've gone over a 6 in like 5 issues. It's not been, the pacing's terrible. Pacing and all the things are pretty bad. JK says, that book was just hard and made no sense. Tim Drake, who lived with Damian Wayne, gets snuck up on. Damian would have milked that kind of reaction every scene just to torture Tim. There was tons of... At one point, Tim Drake solved the threat by throwing up on it. Who comes up with that? It was the worst, because he, hey, acid versus alkaline. I'm going to put my fingers down my throat and vomit. What a ridiculous deal. And War Habit says, I don't know how Dan Moore is drawing 17 books and not going insane. He seems to be able to do it. He likes it. And JK says, I want a Joey Esposito run, preferably on Robin, Nightwing, or Justice League. He does good characterization. I like Joey Esposito. I don't know that I need him on Nightwing, but it might be okay. I actually do like him. JK says, I wish Williamson was on Supergirl. He does a good Supergirl. You could have had him on it. There's a bunch of people that could have been. It's just, it was weird. Sophie Campbell, who, if you do look up, had some really weird stuff about the TMNT, about the Turtles at one point, back in her days. Very odd take. But I don't know. I like the art. I just didn't love the story. It was okay. It just was a beginning. It ended up being caught between, hey, we're going to catch people up, but also we're going to throw things out there in continuity, and with the DEO and the Danvers, and some of it didn't make complete sense, especially with Event Leviathan, but people want to forget about Event Leviathan. JK says, I miss Flatline, so wanted a young traveling anti-hero team. So did I, but once, I don't know why Joshua Williamson ended up introducing Flatline's sister. That was so bad. It ended up like, I don't know. I don't know why that was even a thing. The Hellbat suit, the same suit I sent that video for the statue. Yep. Lane sent me that statue looked awesome. The worst was when Lois got in that suit, because you have to, like, it kills you. The suit. She gets in it. She's fine. Dan Alman says, Campbell can deliver evocative art, but the writing blunted all interest in previous run on TMNT up through issue 150, so not trying Supergirl. Yeah, the art's good. It's just, I don't know. It's one of those, I think that some people coming on books, they tend to want to prove that they know the character, and this went a little bit too far. This went to, like, you're just being hit. And I did say at one point, because you don't have editor's notes then, it's like, oh man, I wonder if that family still lives in Midvale because their son died. And you're like, I don't know anything about it, and I can't remember the guy's name. But that was a guy who tried to expose Supergirl's identity at one point and ended up dying. And like, I went, no editor's notes. What they should have done, two things, if you're that big into it, they should have had at the end a checklist. Hey, everybody, look at this. Page 2. That was a reference to this. go and read Action Comics number 283. Go and read Adventures of Supergirl number 5. And also, if you're really thinking things, get on that damn app and make a curated list of all these appearances and all these things she's talking about so that people could go and check it out, because you're throwing them out there. Maybe you want people to go look at it and see if it was a thing or see how it was a thing. It would have been pretty cool. Yeah, and Elaine says, I'm feeling let down by Ultimate Wolverine. I like the last issue, but it just seems like the book is an excuse to explain why the known mutants are not in the Ultimate X-Men book. And Lane, you go back and listen to me talking on my podcast, talk on The Aficionados, where I said from issue 1, this book is only there to not just explain why they're not on the Ultimate X-Men, just explain that they are out there. And I said right away, I mean, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but I said this book feels like a book that is only there so that we know that these certain characters in the universe, once you then start fighting the Maker. It didn't feel like it had a story. It didn't feel like it was doing much of anything except just, hey, everybody, you don't like the Ultimate X-Men because it has a bunch of girls. That's what Sully says. Here are the real X-Men, but then you're not going to be able to do much with them probably until the Maker comes. And I did say I didn't like the art as well, says Dan Alvin. I didn't like it. And Dan, and Common Sense is in the deal. Hello, Common Sense. And Dan Alvin says, speaking of heavy metal, are you going to review new relaunch of that magazine title a few weeks ago? No. Here's the thing. The idea of even reviewing stuff, it's tough. Ask Gray. Gray puts a lot of effort into his reviews. He'll be like, oh my God, this is going to, and you get 80 views. And it's not even just the idea of how many people are on the channel. Just a lot of people will barely even touch, say, if I did an Action Comics, this last bit of the G. Willow Wilson Action Comics deal, which I thought was garbage. But if I did a review of that, nobody's gonna watch that. I've been told by many people that reviews don't work. They will if it's a number 1. They will if there's some hot ticket item. But if you do things, you kind of get the play of, well, that would be cool to do it, but sometimes it's just not worth it. It just ends up not being worth it at the end, which I hate to say, because when we started everything, we kind of made a point of it doesn't matter if it gets watched or looked at or read. We would still do it because that's what we want to do, but then you run out of time. Common Sense says, I'm still reading Ultimate X-Men. I do enjoy, but I will agree the pacing is slow. Latest issue 15 gave us some great lore, but no action. Great lore. Common Sense, this is the thing, too. I love the characters. I love Peach Momoko. I love her art. The characters are great. Mori is one of my favorite characters, and she barely says a word ever, and I love her. I want to see what happened to Natsu. I love all the things. But the big problem in my mind is the month jump, because they have that everything has to be a month later. So we'll get some really, really cool cliffhangers. And you're like, oh, my God, that at the end of this issue, you end up where they figure out, oh, my God, the girls are about to go and attack the Children of the Atom. And I think that when we get to next issue, it's either going to be right in the middle of that, or it's already done, or it'll be pushed. You end up where every time I'm like, man, this is going to be awesome. And then when we get to the next thing, you almost have this play. And you're probably a smarter man than me, Common Sense. But the idea is I always get thrown back. I have to remember. And it's not that I don't remember what happened the last issue. It's that I don't really. What happened? Oh, yeah, the skip. There you go. And then going back with more of the talking, we will get to the solicits in a minute. You have MH Comics Invictus says, happy Sunday. What have you missed? Me bitching and moaning. That's what you miss, is basically. And you also have Lane say, I'm liking Ultimate Black Panther. The last issue with Storm and T'Challa was good. I dropped that. I'm Ultimate Black Panther. I may be 8 issues behind, 9. I'm never going to catch up. I'm never going to even make the effort to. It was weird. It's a good Black Panther book. Actually, it's really good Black Panther book. Better than a lot of the Black Panther books we've had in a while. But I'm not a huge fan of Black Panther. And in an ultimate deal, I needed it to do a little more, and it just was doing its thing. That's Sully's favorite book right now. So I do think that it's quality, just wasn't doing much for me. Jaber says, I like all the Absolute books. All have strong points. Flash, Superman, Wonder Woman are my faves. Here's the thing. Flash, I love Jeff Lemire. I couldn't even tell you, like, if somebody this is where I end up where a lot of books are like this, and how I talked about this on our podcast a lot, especially when Eric was still on. What it is like, okay, after a couple issues, what's the elevator pitch that I'm going to use to get people to buy the Flash book? What Absolute Flash? If you put me online and said, why should I read and buy Absolute Flash? And I probably would say, well, it's Jeff Lemire. And then they would say, well, I'm not a real big Jeff Lemire fan, so why else? What's going on? What is the hook? I couldn't tell them anything. There's no hook yet. I don't think there's any hook. If you end up asking me about and again, Absolute Batman has way more issues. You'll get the hook eventually. But Absolute Batman, I would say, oh, well, it's this big, huge Batman who kicks babies. He's got this dump truck. I would just say it's over the top, huge, crazy action movie action, and gives you a different spin of Alfred, who's the kind of the MI6 guy in this. And the rogues are actually his friends, which gives it a little twist with the play. And I think that could get some people like, oh, man, that sounds cool. I might check that out. Wonder Woman, I would say the idea of that is instead of her growing up in Themyscira, she grows up in hell, makes hell a better place. It's a really cool way to show how great Diana is. And in the meantime, Cersei, who's usually one of her villains, ends up falling in love as a mother to Diana and teaches her magic. So this is a dark magic version of Wonder Woman. And I think some people might say, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I'll check that out. Superman's a little tricky, because it's one of those, I think it's getting better. I like it. I don't love it. It's my third favorite of the first three. So in that, I would say, well, Superman was on Krypton, He was on Krypton a little longer. He ended up coming down, but there's a lot of cool twists and turns. You have Peacemaker program, a Lazarus thing, and we're still learning. But again, I don't even think I could really convince a lot of people to read Superman, except if you did drop it or said you heard things about it. I could tell you it's getting better. But because of the only couple issues, but Martian Manhunter, I would say it's wacky. It's wacky. And then I'm like, okay. The best I could say about Martian Manhunter might be the idea you're not going to find anything else like it in comics. A lot of people say that like it. I don't think that's the be-all, end-all. But Flash, I don't know. And Green Lantern, I really don't know. And I think I did see Jaber says that definitely likes Green Lantern a little more, saying Absolute Green Lantern is not that bad. It's not that bad. It's just not that good yet. It's nothing. I had to cough there. But again, these books, I hate to be the guy who's like, this book's ridiculous. It's only a couple issues. So we'll see. But I'm wary. I'm more wary of the Green Lantern book, because I think that is way more important than a Martian Manhunter book. I think a Martian Manhunter book can end up being what it is. People can like it for the quirky deal, the crazy art, the out of this crazy world story that might be from, maybe allegedly the writer smoking too much pot and thinking all his ideas are great. I don't know. But yeah, that would be the deal with that. And yeah, and this is the thing. Jaber says the Absolute Spider-Man got good views. The last one got a lot of good views that I did, because it was a #1 and it's Spider-Man. That's the thing. There are certain characters that will get views, and unfortunately, I'll tell you right now, they get good views when the book's bad, because people want to, they want to watch somebody lose their mind or hear somebody lose their mind about something that they're frustrated with as well. I bet you if I started, like, as a test, everybody here will know, will wink, wink, and suddenly I'll start doing reviews on Spider-Man about how great it is, and that anybody who doesn't like it, they just don't understand it. Those views would go down. Maybe they'd go up because people would be yelling with me and arguing. But yeah, it's tough. It is tough doing reviews. Again, the tagline on the site or the channel is, I've been told that uh, comic book reviews don't work on YouTube, and I'm proving them right every review I do, one review at a time. But I'm looking more at the chat here. Jaber says that Supergirl #1 reads like Silver Age. It does. But it's combining a bunch of crazy things, and I think she is going Silver Age, and the actual villain will end up being a Silver Age villain. It's Lesla Lar, if you want to look it up. That's spoiler alert, but that's who I think is 100% the villain. She has done it before. She impersonates Supergirl because she doesn't like Supergirl. She gets jealous, and she's a tech girl who thinks that her genius should be recognized, at one point even teaming up with Lex Luthor. So you have Brandon say, on the Hot or Not podcast, Jim had an expletive-filled rant on Ultimate Wolverine #1. Yeah. And I was right, I think. I ended up getting very upset. Again, I was being an idiot for you saying that after one issue, but I said that's what's going on. I've also had expletive-filled rants about old Absolute Superman and the idea of people not reading it anymore, but saying it sucks. So, and Dan Alman says, I was a patient enthusiast, apologist for Ultimate X-Men, but I dropped it at issue 12 after yet another month of girls vaguely gossiping about a cult in a schoolyard. That's all it is. It's a manga. It's very much a manga. Again, I think Pichimoko's a gem, but Pichimoko has gone on record as saying, I don't know anything about the Marvel Universe. I said this before. There was an interview with, I think it's Zach Davidson, the translator, and he says, I have to marvel up the script. And at one point he put schnicked in the issue, and Peach got a hold of him and said, what the hell's that? And he's like, it's an X-Men thing. It's a Wolverine thing, actually. And she's like, I've never heard of that. And she wasn't being mean about it. She just was confused about why was that in there. And so, take that how you want it. You could get angry and say, well, why is she writing it or whatnot? But it should have been, and I'll ask common sense. I think that this should have been Ultimate Runaways. That's not going to sell. But I think that this is definitely more, in my mind, an Ultimate Runaways book, especially with the idea of a lot of the kids having parents involved in this, children of the Atom cult. You end up having a lot of characters, Nico, and people who are typically runaways. I think it would have been actually accepted a little better, but probably wouldn't have sold that much because it's not X-Men. So they ended up doing that. Common sense says, I disagree with Sully because the men in X-Men don't mean men only. That's not even what he says. He doesn't like books that he says don't have strong men. I don't know if he's thinking about Flex Menelo, like a guy in like the old school strong man outfit. That doesn't bother me ever. And then you get more things here. You have Absolute Superman was the perfect opportunity to kind of do an all-might version of Supes. Yeah, I just, again, it's Superman. The problem with Superman, if I'm going to give you a problem with that book, is we haven't got a lot of Superman. Again, though, have we gotten a lot of Spider-Man in Ultimate Spider-Man? It's a problem. But JK says at least DC is offering a variety now. For a while, each story was essentially the same. I blame poor writers. And Common Sense with a super chat says, I do believe Kelly Thompson is repeating the same mistake of not elevating Wonder Woman's other villain. She made Cheetah a historian that admires Diana. But the problem, or the thing is, Common Sense will see what happens because, there's been times where, you have Cheetah as a historian, as an archaeologist, and things go wrong. She wants to get acceptance from Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman in this is a little cold shoulder-esque and may push her aside. You may end up having Cheetah, get the absolute Urska Taga ends up, inhabiting her and makes her into what she is, which makes her more of a tragic character. If she was somebody that we see admires Diana, but then becomes a villain, I think that there could be a good play there. I'm hoping for that. Who knows? Kelly Thompson and everybody in this chat, maybe Common Sense might. I like Kelly Thompson. I like her writing for the most part. I don't love everything she does. I think she is wildly erratic on things, and I think that Birds of Prey book is god-awful. But I think Wonder Woman's great. I really liked her Black Widow. I liked the West Coast Avengers. That didn't last long, and I read and reviewed a lot of them, but I read every issue of her Captain Marvel, and there were some really good issues in that run. 50 issues and probably 28. I should just 26. So we're above the halfway, but there were some good ideas. There were some good arcs. It's just that then all of a sudden you'd get a bad arc, or you always had to have the girls' night out issue, or you'd have those sort of things where it just lost momentum. And I think that was the biggest problem I had with her Captain Marvel run, was that every time I thought it was gaining momentum, it kind of lost it. And as a little tip to a lot of writers out there, I know that they're all listening right now. You have to realize when you're doing a book, you have to realize if you're doing a character that isn't well liked, it's your job to make people like them. That, if I get put on a Naomi book, at one point Naomi was a darling. Everybody wanted Naomi. Or say, well, we'll go with some things that I like that a lot of people don't. I like Miss Marvel. I don't think she threw it well. But if I go and I'm writing Miss Marvel, if I'm writing America Chavez, if I'm writing Gabby, who is the best ever, I have to realize that people don't like her. I can't go in and say, oh, the people who don't like her, they're bull crap, and I'm just... You have to realize it, and you have to make sure that your book accentuates the cool things about that character and why, and make it so that you're writing to convince people why that character is a great character. And anytime you're doing a character that isn't really liked at all, you can't have down times. You can't end up having, a 6-issue arc that doesn't hit, because even the people who are giving you a chance will then bail. And then suddenly it becomes, yeah, that character will never work. And that's what drives me nuts when you end up, when you're writing a book, and some people, like Captain Atom, some people, well, question Renee Montoya. I see a lot of people getting upset, and they want Vic Sage, even though he changed his name. But just say Captain Atom. When you do a Captain Atom book, you got to realize that Captain Atom doesn't get a lot of books, and you better hit, because at the end, unfortunately, DC and a lot of people will blame the character as not being a good character, and that's your fault. You wrote a shitty book, and now Captain Atom doesn't get a mini or a solo for 20 years now because of what you did. And I don't think the weight of that ever hits with people. They're like, oh, I'm going to tell this story that's not a Captain Atom story. It's something that I used to think about when I was in 6th grade. So here we go. That nonsense. So also, why write a character to ruin them? That's Tom King. I don't get it. I don't get it. JK says, I've been disappointed with Nightwing. I like the art. Dick looks like a grown man, but the story is meh. I expected more from Waters' run. Then it's just not as bad as Taylor's run. And JK, I've been saying that since the beginning, and nobody would listen to me. I think that really #Jim is right. I think that we should start making this trend. And there are times, and here's the thing too. If I am wrong, I will admit it, but I'm wrong there. I said something's wrong with this. The idea that people want Nightwing to do something because Tom Taylor was really more of a PR agent than a writer. Every issue was supposed to say, hey, everybody, Dick Grayson's a great guy. That Nightwing's pretty cool. But we all know that. Never got past that in my mind. Then you get Dan Waters, who jumps on, and you have furries where, the teddies, and you got the Clean Cut crew and the Fly Boys. And I'm like, this is not good. This is weird. And then you get convoluted things, including where I do believe it's next week Nightwing comes out. And we're going to get the solicits. I'll get through this deal, but just to talk about the idea where we ended up having that Captain Hollow. Was that what his name was? That ghost cop shows up in Nightwing last issue, and I'm leaning on everybody here who ended up reading Nightwing the last issue, when suddenly it becomes not the Flyboys, not the Teddies. All of a sudden, it becomes this crazy ghost cop who goes after the guy who killed the kid in the Teddies. He ended up, the kid drew a gun on him. He had a mask on. You're going to get in trouble if you do that. But he ended up, because he was armed with a missile launcher, it looked way worse than it was. So you end up having this Captain Hollow show up. The crazy A crazy deal. It's the crazy play of a cop who ends up what I thought was it's a cop who ends up, doling out some street justice to people who really didn't get like they end up bad people who got away with things. So I thought that's what it was. Read the solicit for next week, because what it says is that this ghost cop, he was the first corrupt cop back on the Bloodhaven Police Department, and he ends up coming back to kill good people. But yet you spent last issue trying to establish that the guy who killed the kid, he was a wife and kid beater to make him look bad. So I think this convoluted nonsense is the idea. Remember there was those guys that were sitting around and eating cake and talking? They're obviously the villains, but they were like, what's going on? But where did we get the idea that this Captain Hollow was a corrupt cop that comes back to kill good cops? So weird. So basically you're saying that you set up a thing of why Bloodhaven cops are bad? They're scared of ghosts coming to get them. So they end up being bad. They don't want to be good, or else, oh my God, ghost cop's going to get me. I read that solicit. I was like, what am I reading? Holy moly. Yeah, Nightwing is my favorite character. Nightwing, along with just Dick Grayson in general. I didn't like much of the whole Rebirth Nightwing. I liked the runoffs, the group of characters that kind of got pushed aside. That seemed kind of cool. But then you had, oh my God, look, Dick Grayson got a girl pregnant, but then he didn't. Then even the weird thing with Tim Seeley at the very beginning, and let's not get into Rick Grayson, even though I've read and reviewed you can go back and listen to the podcast where me and Eric, we definitely like some of the things with Rick Grayson, but nothing was Rick Grayson. It was the Nightwing squad that we actually did like. And some of those, with the firemen, like all those was cool. And what was the kid? Was it Spencer? Or what? The one guy who every time he got out of the hospital, he was put back in the hospital. It made me laugh. It was that girl's brother. The thing that got me with Tim Seeley was at the very beginning, if you remember, and I think it was the Better Than Batman arc, right at the beginning, where Batman gets kidnapped. They end up and Bruce Wayne gets kidnapped, and they have him in a death trap that's being broadcast, and they're going to kill him. And then Tim Seeley thought that if a CEO is about to be murdered in a crazy death trap, that would make stocks skyrocket. And somehow it made Wayne Industries like $1 billion more because Bruce Wayne almost got killed. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. I don't know if the stock market reacts to things like that in a way that, oh man, that's the greatest thing ever. Or else we'd have a lot of people faking death traps all over the place. But we end up Jose shut up and said, hey, nerds, I believe this is my first time at a Weird Science Comics live stream. And welcome, Kaiser. Always see you in the aficionados that I pop in and out there. But we do this every week and talk comics. It's amazing. And Dungeon Crawler Carl, that was a bit of a shot fired. I'll be on the aficionados later, I think. I think the next time that I said that I'd be on is like June something. But it's when Wes won't be there and Aaron needs some people to fill in some spots. So I said I would do that, but I normally don't go in to it as much anymore. But I also end up recording a lot of stuff on Saturdays. So Dungeon Crawler Carl says, I haven't liked a Nightwing book since before they did the whole spy thing. I actually like some of Grayson. And that was Tim Seeley and Tom King. I didn't realize, I was fooled. I admit it that I was fooled. I thought the book was fun. And then when they left, because they pulled them off to go to do their Batman and Nightwing runs on Rebirth, and Lansing and Kelly came in. And at that point, people didn't know that Lansing and Kelly were such nonsense, the hive mind. I did know, but I don't blame them for that, Grayson. When they came in and had to clean up that book and end it, there were so many loose ends, so many things that made no sense that were they kept getting pushed aside. They were piling up in the corner, but you didn't realize because the book looked pretty good with Michael Yannon and also was fun. You had some songs, Agent 16? I can't remember what his agent name was, but it ended up where he was singing songs and it was fun. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh crap, There was a lot of things going on there. JK said he thought that Seeley's run was fun for the most part. He had potential. I was not a big fan of oh, what's his name with the Soilak, the leper. Not a fan of him. That ended up with stuff Agent 37. Yeah, it was pretty fun when you had that going on. But and also it was kind of a cool play because and Forever Evil screwed Kyle Higgins' run, which I liked, and then you end up taking advantage of, oh, people think that Dick Grayson's dead, so he goes off as a secret agent, but then Batman died, so he couldn't be pulled out of deep cover. There was a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, 16. Yeah, that whole Auto Nets and Spider and Spiral and all that stuff was crazy. Yeah, and JK said, I love that crew. I prefer. One of the problems I hate about Tom Taylor is he went back to the Rick Grayson stuff. I didn't need that stuff anymore. And that Rick Grayson stuff was not good. It just wasn't very good. But Matthew Price says, better it sounds I preferred Ghost Cop compared to furry shit. That's the thing, though. I hate to get involved in the idea of, well, this is better, but they both suck. Ghost Cop. And they better have it. Nightwing better know about the Ghost Cop because he was a policeman in Bloodhaven, and they've referenced it in Tom Taylor's run. So he better know about Ghost Cop. The Ghost Cop who comes back after good cops. And good cops meaning usually what I would think is this Ghost Cop comes in when somebody's going to turn on the cops, and go against the unwritten rules and break that thin blue line. But not just because he goes by the book, because what this guy could have then said, but why go after me, Ghost Cop? I beat my wife and kids. I'm not a great guy. Please, Ghost Cop, please. Ghost Cop. Yeah. And the Captain Nemo was great. Captain Nemo was awesome. Aquaman was so much fun. I will tell you this week, Aquaman, you end up having Captain Nemo show up, and my initial reaction was, wait a second, this is ridiculous. And then like one panel later, I'm like, you know what? No, it isn't. This is awesome. I love it. And I want more and more and more. I want Marine Boy to show up, but he's not going to. Gabriel says, speaking of Ruck, I just finished reading his Punisher Warzone. Pretty cool. And that's what Kaiser Jose says. Yeah, Rucka, that book feels weird. We'll talk about that in the Solicits. We will get to it. That whole, I don't know, Robs from the Just, that seems like that seems like a elevator pitch that nobody would go with, but it's Rucka. And I think it's whatever Greg Rucka wanted to do. They're really always trying to woo him back. You had the Wonder Comic stuff with the Lois Lane deal, and then he ditched again, and here we go. And we'll get to the end of the live chat, and then I'll move on to the Solicits. Grayson was a huge missed opportunity. The potential was teased with Dick meeting Lex Luthor face-to-face. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I knew that it wouldn't last forever, but I was having fun with it until I realized, ooh, this stuff, Auto Nets and all that is so convoluted, and they were not doing it they were doing it with a heavy hand and pushing things aside. So at the end, things went wonky, and then you have the Somnus satellite, if you remember that even tying in with some of the Batman and Robin Eternal. There's some of the most ridiculous things I've ever read. And yeah, Common Sense. I said it. I thought the first issue of Nightwing by Tom Taylor, I thought it was great. And it was because I was so tired of Rick Grayson. I'm like, oh my God, this guy loves Nightwing. And I'm telling you, even if you don't think so, but it felt like reading Nightwing through a lot of that second half. When Ben Percy quit because he said, I'm not doing this damn crazy shit that you want me to do with Dick Grayson, and quit and went to Marvel, it just became just a bunch of people on it. And it started to get the feel of these people either don't know Nightwing or they kind of hate him. And it started getting very depressing. And then when you get to Tom Taylor, it felt like a breath of fresh air, that first issue. I gave it a huge score, thinking, oh my God, this is so cool. You end up getting it. Then the next issue, I'm like, okay, we're not doing much here. The third issue, and whatever it was, once you started having the Titans show up, I put a slam on the brakes moment on the podcast and started getting upset because I said, Nightwing's a street level character, and you have now added things like Titans, like a Wally West flat. It's too much. You can't allow a street level character to only rely on other people to do your job because they have superpowers. And I said the power levels are off now. This is going to cause a lot of problems. I think I was right there. And then by the fourth or fifth issue, I said, this run is doing nothing. This run is, and I kept saying, I'm reading the book saying, oh, yeah, he's telling me that Dick Grayson's a great guy, which I am a huge Dick Grayson fan. I know that. It's fine to introduce that aspect to people. And I do say, and I'll stick with it, it did with Eisner's, which is crazy, but who cares about that anymore? That I tell you, Eisner's the best thing that you get out of an Eisner. If you win it, you could put it in your profile on Twitter or on Blue Sky or whatever the hell they do. But in the meantime, I ended up where I said, this run, what is it doing? But for me, being a Nightwing fan, I do know that. But I did see still people going into this saying, it's, oh my God, I love it. Why do you hate it? And I'm like, well, have you read a lot of Nightwing? And they said no. So I do think, though, that while I thought that the run was nonsense, I think that it was a really good jumping on point for a lot of people who will now be big Nightwing fans going forward, if and only if they decide to read more. If they go and read the Chuck Dixon stuff, they will then immediately realize that what got them into it wasn't that great, but it was a good jumping on point. It is a book that when a lot of books are very, very dour, they're very, crazed out and very dark, that book always was, when you read it, the heroes went in weird ways, but it also, again, like I said, one of the detriments to me is every issue was, look at that Dick Grayson, everybody loves him. That's good if you don't know the character, but you have to develop past that. And if you just end with that, you're not getting the real Nightwing. But I do think it was a good little play. It is almost, here's what I'd say. This is backdoor shade, but I think that the Little Titans, the Tiny Titans books, or the Little Batman, or Little Gotham, whatever the hell all of them are. I really like the Tiny Titan deal, or Back to the Treehouse stuff. That's really good to get little kids into the books, right? They read that, and especially the Tiny Titans does a play where they'll end up making the character say a Deathstroke. He ends up being the gym teacher, but you will get a lot of actual concrete info about Slade, but in a way that kids can digest it and then move on. I don't want to say that the people reading the Nightwing book and liking it, that they're kids, but it is that kind of like feel of, okay, I'm going to give you the basic, fun, over the top, here you go. And then you move on. Eventually you move on. So there you go. Yeah, and Little Gotham is cute. All of those. I love it. I'm telling you, one of my favorite books right now is Teen Titans Go. I love it. And Dungeon Crawler Carl says Dick needs a better separate rogues gallery. And but Blockbuster, oh, he's dead. You take one of his biggest villains and he's dead. And even that, the convoluted backstory and things. And Tony, how many times is Tony Zuko going to get arrested for the murder of the Flying Graysons? It's like the guy's been arrested like 17 times. And then what you do is, you usually have, Zuko's daughter, that Dick Grayson falls. Oh, no, now it's Zuko's daughter. But it's not Zuko's daughter. It's actually Dick Grayson's brother or sister, half-sister. Oh, my God, I was so angry. And that Dick was reduced to damsel in distress. Yeah. And I said in Black Mirror, it might be Dick's best story. That might be. Yeah, and a person was talking to me the other day, and they somehow they thought that Black Mirror was in the New 52. It was right before. But that was a really good story. And Dan Alman says, Titans Go 2 box sets were just purchased by a local library here. It's really fun. I do like it. But we'll go to the Solicits. The DC Solicits ended up coming out. Some of the things ended up dropping a little early. And I'm going to go from Bleeding Cool here because, they're just writing Solicits. So they still can mess up the spelling. Rich Johnson's the worst. But I'm going to go because it also has the what's it called, previous catalog stuff to look at. But we're not going to go through every one. We'll just go through some. But Batman 163, written by Jeff Loeb, art by Jim Lee. It is the end of this first part one. I'm telling you, the idea that you have these 6 issues, then it's going to come back a year later. I think when it comes back with a whisper, not a shush, but a whisper. But here it's well, I'm looking now. It comes out August 27th, 2025. It's $4.99. The shocking conclusion to H2SH. I don't like that either. Hush 2. Part 1 with Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. Will Batman survive Hush's revenge when his only allies are his greatest enemies? Don't miss the finale of Hush 2, Part 1. All right. I don't think we'll miss it, but I'm not really loving it so much. But we also have a giant size edition. I actually saw, has anybody actually seen some of those giant sizes? They are giant. They ain't lying. Those things are huge. But then they go off to Absolute Batman number 11, written by Scott Snyder with art by Clay Mann. Crazy, so we'll probably see some sexy dead ladies because he loves doing that. $4.99, comes out August 13th. Learn the origin of Bane. What drives the muscle-bound behemoth, and how did he arrive in Gotham? The origin of Absolute Bane. Pinhead Bane, you get. And again, Graham Nolan coming out and really throwing shade. I guess it was Nick Dragotta's art for that Bane deal with the Pinhead. I didn't think it looked great, but I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I think that it'll look better once you get the book. But boy, he was throwing a lot of shade, and then ended up having to back off from that because people were like, that's kind of bullshit, an artist yelling about another artist, right? I thought it was bullshit too. But we'll see. Next issue is Bane. We get the Arc M, see what's happening, and hopefully Waylon Croc will be saved by the Absolute Batman before he gets maybe turned into Croc, which will probably happen. Absolute Superman number 10, written by Jason Aaron, art and cover by Rafa Sandoval. $4.99. It comes out on August 6th. Superman's true enemy stands revealed. The notorious Ra's al Ghul, Lord of Lazarus Corp, murder of millions. He plans for the last son of Krypton, or has plans for the last son of Krypton. Will Kal-El's rage unleash the dark power of Superman, son of the demon? Ra's al Ghul sets his sights on Superman. And Jason Aaron, you better set his sights a bit on Superman himself, because I do believe that even having this, and we're going to deal more with Ra's than Superman. And I think that maybe if Jason Aaron would say, like, well, everybody knows Superman, we gotta, this is a different thing. You gotta do it. You gotta end up giving us more information. The next deal is Absolute Wonder Woman number 11, written by Kelly Thompson, art and cover by Hayden Sherman. Yeah, Hayden Sherman has the unenviable job of coming back after that awesome art the last 2 issues, and his art's okay. It works better in Dark Patterns than it does in Wonder Woman. I'm getting used to it, but you got a shock to the system when this epic art that we just had. But it's $4.99, comes out August 27th. The balance of power inside the maze is tilting with Diana's presence, but it may just tilt into full-blown chaos. Chaos in an underground maze prison. That's bad, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. We'll see. We'll see what I don't even know what that's about. I haven't been reading all the solicits up to this point. I just thought it'd be cool to do it here. Absolute Green Lantern number 5. At this point, we should know what's going on, correct? Al Ewing writing, art by Janoy Lindsay. Not a fan of the art. $4.99. August 6th, the remains of Evergreen Terrace are scavenged for clues as to what happened to this quaint small town. I have a feeling we're going to be dealing with that. Meanwhile, Joe faces down the hulking threat of Hal Jordan. Hal presses that attack. Not loving that book. I hope I hope it's better than that sounds. Absolute Flash number 6. And did you see that this coming up next week, we're going to be doing Absolute Flash. It'll be on our Absolute show on Friday night, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live stream here. And even on the cover, you end up having baby, like little Grodd. I say baby Grodd, but that little Grodd that we got is on Wally's shoulder, so it looks like he's his friend, like I said he would be. Pretty cool. Absolute Flash number 6, Jeff Lemire, Nick Robles. It is $4.99, August 20th. Just who are the mysterious rogues chasing after Wally West, and how did they join Project Olympus? The rogues revealed. Okay, we'll see. Again, kind of want more Wally, see what's going on there. Absolute Martian Manhunter number 6. That would have been the end of what was the series. It was going to be a 6-issue series. It got extended. Let's see if this kind of goes with something here. Absolute Martian Manhunter 6, Dennis Camp. Art and cover by Javier Rodriguez. It is August 27th. Ideas explode like atom bombs. Minds melt and colors clash in the darkness behind the eyes of every person on the planet. It's Green Martian versus White Martian. John Jones versus madness itself. As he fights to save his family and the world, the Martian marches into madness. We'll see. We will see. Yeah. I just don't like it. And I'm guessing that this is just my guess. In issue 7, we'll get a guest artist. I have a feeling that it's going to come up in that next one. They extended it. They're going to want him to get ahead. And nobody will like it because most of it's art. And I think that is something that it's not my cup of tea. But we'll move on to the next one, which I am excited about. Immortal Legend Batman number 1. Not Immortal Legend of the Batman. It's Immortal Legend Batman number 1, written by Kyle Higgins, who I do really like, and Matt Groom, who seems to be the guy he grooms. That has a very odd connotation now, but it seems to be his buddy. Art by Erica Durso and Dan Mora. I would say more you say Dan Mora and Erica Durso, but maybe they're going alphabetical there. And just so you know, there's a variant cover by Homare. One word, Homare. Ooh-wee. That's what I yelled at this girl named Mari. I shouldn't say that. It is $4.99, August 27th. I'm looking forward to see what this is about. It says, humanity broke the barrier between our universe and our universe's shadow. From the void came horrific apparitions that crawled or craved. I can't even read this thing. Craved nothing but destruction. This sounds a lot like the dark multiverse, but from this terror, a legend was born. A warrior found a way to access the energy that binds our universe to the shadow universe, transforming him into a cosmic dark knight. This immortal legend was named Batman. He fought to keep us safe, but then one day abandoned the war. Though he didn't disappear entirely, now they say he hunts a rogue gallery of monsters born from the shadows. Kyle Higgins and Matt Groom kickstart a new sci-fi Batman epic. I just said I love Kyle Higgins. That sounds like complete garbage. But we'll see. Is it going to be one of those that I'm like, after 2 issues, I'm like, yeah, I think this is more Matt Groom. I don't trust Matt Groom. I've said this before. The guy, it's Matt with 1 T. I don't like that. What is he? Wait, he can't afford another T? Is that what happened? His parents on the birth certificate? That doesn't sound great. That doesn't sound great. But we'll go to the next one, which is something that people I saw were even not arguing with, but kind of talking about in our Slack chat for our Patreon. Superman, the Kryptonite Spectrum number 1, written by W. Maxwell Prince, art and cover by Martin Morazzo, $5.99, August 13th. The team behind the critically acclaimed Ice Cream Man comic comes to DC to apply its singular storytelling style to none other than the Man of Steel. Anything can work. This does not feel like it's going to work, but I'm not a guy who likes Ice Cream Man. I don't like those sort of stories. I don't like the horror stuff. I don't like the Twilight Zone-esque storytelling of any of those things. So I probably won't even read this, but I'm sure people will be excited for it. 4 new kryptonites have been discovered in deep space. Great. And Superman needs to know just what exactly they do to him, lest the colorful rocks of his home planet fall into evil hands. With Batman at Superman's side, I wish one turned him into a female disco dancer or something. That'd be pretty cool. This DC Black Label Superman event explores the consequences of each never-before-seen variety of kryptonite, all in the former and boundary-pushing fashion that W. Maxwell Prince, Martin Morazzo, and Chris O'Halloran are celebrated for. The critically acclaimed Ice Cream Man team apply their singular storytelling style to the Man of Steel. 17-plus content. That sounds like garbage. But again, it's not my thing. the idea of new kryptonite. I mean, when we ended up where, what was it? I love when we have the periwinkle, though, but was it the platinum kryptonite that Tom King ended up introducing because it would give full powers so that he could just make Gotham Girl actually have powers after she didn't? I don't know if it was that, but it was something stupid. Justice League Red #1, written by Saladin Ahmed, art and cover by Clayton Henry. Talked a little bit about this on our news on this week's podcast. Saladin Ahmed coming over from Marvel to do this book, and I said. But not a lot of people seem to like Saladin Ahmed. I don't mind him. I thought his Black Bolt book was great, and I've liked, at least I liked the beginning of his Daredevil, kind of, even though I was there to say, listen, everybody, people were losing their mind. I ended up getting in such an argument with some guy about the idea that Saladin Ahmed was underhandedly, secretly putting out a anti-Semitism type book because of this character that showed up. And I said, it's sloth, the deadly sin. It's very obvious. And it's the classic vision of it. And he didn't do the art. But in the meantime, they're like, no, it's not that. And it ended up being that. And Ember came back and said they were sorry. They were. But Saladin Ahmed's okay. I actually said on the news deal that for me, Saladin Ahmed is one of those writers who his best is never going to wow me. The best issue he could ever write is not a 10 out of 10. It's like an 8/8. And his worst is probably a 5. Like, it's not one of those where some writers, I said Kelly Thompson earlier, like you can go from 10 to 1. I just think he's kind of boring. I think that he meanders a bit. I think that he's okay, but never anybody who I would say, oh my God, he's doing a book, I need to read it. But I don't say, oh, he's reading it, I won't read it. Some people do. But it is $3.99. That's good. It's and this is Justice League Red #1 again. And it is August 20th. The Justice League has a new Spec Ops team so covert, the founders can't know it exists. Usually that means Batman just brainwipes people. That'd be cool. And its leader is the only hero who could keep JLR, which does not roll off the tip of the tongue. Somehow it reminds me of John Romita Jr., off its radar, because he is the radar. Red Tornado is the heart and mind of the Watchtower, watching, projecting into the future, and his projections point to apocalypse as a direct result of the concentrated power of the JLU. And every time I see that JLU, I think back of the Jeff Lemire book. But in the meantime, I also have some pop-up ad that was starting to play music. When your Justice League ID card lights up red, Reddy needs you. For the fate of humanity and for yourself, because you don't just, I'm having problems, because you don't want to find out what Red can do with what he knows about you. He's coming at you, brother. Join a Best in the Biz creative team. Best in the Biz, they say. Saladin Ahmed. And you know that Saladin Ahmed does not have quite a, expanded repertoire or bibliography, because DC and also on the other side, Marvel, they don't like to push a writer as being somebody from the other company. You'll end up where you'll get Al Ewing and they'll just bring up every, crazy. They might put Immortal Hulk just because of how big it was, but they'll usually use like, hey, he did these couple indie books. But Saladin Ahmed, Wolverine, Daredevil, and Clayton Henry, Action Comics, We Are Yesterday, which isn't a Beatles song yet, and an all-star team of heroes, and find out how far they'll go to keep the peace and keep Red Tornado's secrets. All-stars Saladin Ahmed and Clayton Henry sound the alarm. I hope it's better than such things as Question All Along the Watchtower, because that book stunk, and Alex Segura is not very good. But this is Saladin Ahmed. Here's a book that we were talking about in the chat a little earlier. Cheetah and Cheshire robbed the Justice League #1. I will point out that Cheshire I have kind of a soft spot for, because she legit in comic continuity has killed me at least 3 times. So there you go. Written by Greg Rucka, art and cover by Nicholas Scott. $3.99, August 6th. This it feels so weird. Just the title. But this is something. A daring heist aboard the most secure facility in the DCU. If they're talking about that Watchtower, it is hardly that. From what we've seen so far, with Airwave, with Cyborg Superman, with just any rando that decides to just cause trouble on the Watchtower. This shit's going wrong. Cheetah and Cheshire assemble a team of misfits and oddballs to pull off the impossible, robbing the Justice League Watchtower and getting away with it. This feels like, am I wrong? This feels like something that Peacemaker would end up doing, thinking that he's doing something right and just him and Vigilante doing some crazy shit. All that stands between them and pulling off the most daring heist in history are a few tiny complications, such as the most sophisticated orbital platform ever constructed, its AI-driven security system, and one other thing: the smartest and most powerful heroes in the DCU. Eisner Award winners Greg Rucka and Nicholas Scott bring you a slick, stylish heist that guarantees fun, laughs, and more than a few twists and turns. Superstar creators Greg Rucka and Nicholas Scott team up for the heist of a lifetime. Oh, me! Oh, gosh. We'll see. We'll see how it is. And again, I'm not going to go through every one, but I will do this next one. I probably would have skipped it, but it's Detective Comics number 1100. You know, that has to be a anniversary / milestone / let's charge more or do some weird stuff. And it's written by Tom Taylor, Greg Rucka, Mariko Tamaki, and Dan Waters. Art by Michael Yanin, Alvaro Martinez Bueno, Amin K. Napoleon, and Bill Sinkowitz. It is only $4.99. I'm surprised, but it's only 56 pages. With all those names, August 20th. In March 1937, a comic book was published that changed the world as we know it. It was not Plastic Man. Now, 1,099 issues later, some of comics, I really want to know the math on these. I think Marvel really skews the math a lot with those legacy numbers. 1,099 issues later, some of comics' top talents have gathered to celebrate the comic that birthed a legend. Tom Taylor and Michael Yanin join forces once again to tell a heartfelt and action-packed story of Batman rescuing a young boy's best friend. Greg Rucka and Alvaro Martinez Bueno team up for a tale that asks the question, was Gotham better off before Batman? Because nobody's ever asked that. Mariko Tamaki, I'm going to guess she's going to end up where people are eating. Mariko Tamaki reunites with Detective Comics collaborator Amin Khan and Papillon for a yarn that explores Bruce Wayne's world outside of the cowl and how his double life as Batman intersects with his alter ego's actions. That sounds boring because it's Mariko Tamaki. One of the worst detective runs I've read. Dan Waters and legendary artist Bill Sinkowitz bring us a story that illustrates just how similar Batman's motivations are to the criminals he has sworn to fight, and now, or how he fights against his own darkness. An epic, star-studded, oversized celebration, 1,100 issues in the making. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Greg Rucka, cool, right? You got some art. But where's like some of the other bigger writers that were on Detective in the past? Oh, they won't work with Marvel for the most part. But we will, or Marvel for DC. But we'll see. That doesn't sound great. But I'm going to go to the chat real quick and see what is happening here. Yeah, Grant Morrison used Black Curry. Everybody comes up with their own crappy kryptonite, but to have that many, I just think it's ridiculous. Common Sense said Jimmy read Ghost Rider. That literally was a horror comic, and I did, and didn't like it, and talked about it all the time about how I didn't like it. The idea, remember that one where he was in that hotel, and they were in the walls and doing things. I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. It's not for me at all. And JK says he doesn't like horror, but DC needs variety. That is true. But again, I don't know. You already have, Dark Patterns is kind of hard. You have some of these things, but as long Bizarro, yeah, I believe Absolute Firestorm, maybe Heatwave, and Ronnie Raymond. Yep, that would be the case, I believe. And Common Sense also asks, what Superman villain do you want to see in Absolute Superman? I pick Shadow Dragon, Conduit, and Encantadora. Actually, I mean, I would go basic first. I would really like to see, and it looks like they're making maybe Peacemaker into a what's it called, Mentallo, but I'd like to see, or it could be a Cyborg Superman. I'd like to see what Lex Luthor's doing in this universe, but I would like Bizarro would be weird. I'm trying to think here. Maybe Rogolzar is what we can have. Rogolzar, who actually saved Krypton in the Absolute universe. But also, yeah, again, when you go with the idea, I'd like to see a twist that a character isn't necessarily like, oh man, they were always a good guy or gal, and now they're evil. See how that would work. But yeah, variety's fine. I'm just saying when you have the horror stuff, I really don't like it and don't really go to it. Yeah, and Gotham Girl was a dumb storyline. I actually liked it at first when you had Gotham and Gotham Girl, but it never really went anywhere and then just fizzled out. And then she came back and she beat the crap out of Captain Atom for no reason. And Daredevil went on 18, 19 issues. It was 19 issues on that one story. And I bailed. I bailed at one point. Common Sense says, I'm still pissed about Sally Named gave Miles Morales a clone saga. The advice Peter told Miles, do not let anyone clone you. Basically, Common Sense, that was not Sally Named. That would have been the editors. They probably said, hey, he needs this. It wasn't great. It wasn't. You got, what's his name, Glop or whatever that damn thing is that just looks like a wreck wrap that's melding. JK says 8.8 is a pretty good book. Highest I've ever rated is 8.5. I've given 10s, and I've given, a couple of them. I gave 9s last week. I also have given 1s. So mostly those were Ann Nocenti's Catwoman run in the New 52. And you have Grant Morrison use Black Kryptonite. Said that Black Ops Jail book sounds dumb. JLU Justice League unread, says Riley. JLS Justice League stupid. I thought the best was, and it was the Jeff Lemire, where they were doing that Canadian team, and people, I say this all the time, but it was Justice League A, which I thought that was pretty funny. You had some pretty cool deal in that JLU, but that book fell apart. Common Sense says, why Red Canary is one of the team without Sideways? Come on, Red Canary and Sideways are a dynamic duo. No, Red Canary's bullshit and the worst character I've ever read. That isn't a character and shouldn't be anywhere near anything that deals with any Justice League. The Red Canary's backstory is she was in a music shop and El Kabonged a guy over the head with a guitar and then thought, I want to be like Black Canary. And Black Canary's like, what? You hardly have any training and you're just this girl who hit somebody with a guitar? Okay, let's go fight Doomsday. The girl should have been dead 6 ways till Sunday, and it hasn't even been a character. And, Sideways. I did like Sideways, though. And that Sideways book needed to pick up the pace at one point and then just got canceled because of what it was. I don't get the Red Canary character at all. Sideways. I like Red Canary because it does. Red Canary's nothing. This is the thing. Joshua Williamson makes up characters by just changing colors or rhyming names. Hush? No, I got Shush. Dr. Fate. How about Dr. Hate? Hey, Black Canary? Nope, we got Red Canary. That's almost all of his characters end up being nonsense like that. And it's just like spouting off things. It's just like somebody there spitballing stupid names. I'm telling you, if you were there and everybody was sitting there and you and your buddy end up, you're going to make a comic and you're like, what should we do? Like, and it's going to be like a thing you want to push to DC. So it's DC stuff. And you're like, hey, I got this idea. You like Hush? We're going to do Shush. You would tell that person to shush themselves. You tell them they're ridiculous. Black Canary? Well, how about Red Canary? Well, what does that mean? I don't know. She had red clothes. That's basically what we know about the character. And legit, and what I think is one of the weirdest things is they tried to make it so that she was more viable because she knows martial arts. But the only reason you kind of get that is because she's Asian. It says that Justice League ID card can get you into any prison on Earth, apparently. Like it did, yeah. Yeah, they just swipe that thing and they're in. I would like an Impulse Ace book, says JK. Those characters have good chemistry. Well, you kind of got that weird Ace, that one, that Speed Force book, and that was terrible. That book was so bad. But yeah, Impulse and Ace would be pretty cool. I always feel like I'm going to like Rucka, but I never actually do. I think I just like the sound of his name. He's okay. I made the mistake of not really loving his Wonder Woman. When Rebirth started, I couldn't really wrap my head around it. It was jumping between a year one story and a present deal. It was referencing a lot of things that I wasn't aware of at the time. And then afterwards went and reread it and really liked it and was sad that he ended up leaving the book. But he left the book because suddenly he realized, wait a minute, 2 issues a month. This is continuing? Screw that. And he left, and it was a shame. And JK says about the Secret Six #1, yeah, they just swiped that card. That Secret Six book is not really good. JK says, oh, that's that Nicole Main's book, right? And that is. And I will say that a lot of people will throw, shade at Nicole Main's. I think that she's a decent writer. She needs help. She's not a writer. She's an actress and ends up where they push her into being a writer. And I don't think there's anybody at DC that is there to help anybody. I think that it is the Wild West. You name me the big writer that's an editor at DC like we've had in the past. Somebody that can say to Nicole Maines, listen, this doesn't work. The pacing here is off. You get this, whatever. And legit, if you have been reading her books, they're getting worse as they go on. Each new series seems to take a step down, and I think it's because she desperately needs somebody to kind of guide her and to, give her a little bit of, help and guidance about what the whole play is. She seemingly probably did research on herself, probably got like some sort of book or whatever of the basics of writing comics, knows the process, knows how this page means that amount, the script is 21 page, whatever. But in the meantime, I don't think anybody's there to help her. And why I think a lot of the writers aren't doing very well, because we have a lot of writers that are coming from TV, movies, things like that. But you then get somebody who is a natural storyteller like a Jeremy Adams, and he's able to elevate himself. I've talked to the guy. They don't seem to be giving him help either, but he's a step above. But if you're going to have these writers, if you can't find a lot of writers, the writers that you get, at least give them a shot. At least help them out. You're grabbing them because you can't get typical comic writers, but they do need guidance, and they're not giving it to them. And that's why then after that, because there was a big round with Jeremy Adams, Tim Sheridan, that didn't work out. Megan Fitzmartin, you have Nicole Maines, all these even young adult writers. You end up having, Jadzia Axelrod or whatever, Joanna Starr. A lot of these, I say, these are the ones that came in a wave, and not many of them worked out. There's a reason why they're grabbing a lot of Marvel writers now. There's a reason why we said Saladin Ahmed's name earlier, or why they're going back and maybe begging Greg Rucka to come back. But it's not just because these writers were bad. It's because these writers don't really know what they're doing and weren't being told how to do it. And that's a shame. Scott Snyder used to have a workshop. Joey Esposito, I believe, went through that workshop. Somebody can verify that. And they need that help. But I keep saying, I think that instead of editors or just editors, because I've even seen Brittany Halser, was the worst, say, well, editor's job now is just to make people happy and get trades for them and get them coffee. If that's the editor's job now, then they need something more. They need an ambassador. They need somebody, I would call them the caretaker of the DC universe, where they end up, they're sitting there and somebody says, hey, this is a Secret Six book. What do you think? And they read through it and say, listen, this doesn't feel like a Secret Six book. And you're going to get people who are Secret Six fans upset because they're going to feel like they were duped. And then people who aren't really Secret Six, they probably won't buy it anyway. But if they do, they're going to be confused about any of this, and you got to write it better. But there's nobody doing that. Again, it might be the lay of the land that they're desperate and they have to kiss people's asses that don't deserve to get their asses kissed because they just don't have enough writers. But you have, if anything was close to a 10, it was Battle Beast. I did read Battle Beast. I wouldn't give it a 10. I'd probably give it a 9.2. I haven't really thought of it. I thought that it kind of, people will laugh, but I think it was a little bit too long. But that's just me. Lane says, so what is this Just League Red thing that is coming? It's nonsense. It's what it is. I don't know what they're going to be doing. I don't know why they need the team. It just feels like an added book. JK, it's the obnoxious part. Yeah, it seems at one point they kind of said, "Oh, by the way, she's Asian." I'm like, maybe I'm the worst person, but that's what the deal is. And isn't that the Red Tornado book? Yeah. Um, JLR is some wank spinoff with Red Tornado in charge. Secret team. I figured Maine's had an underpaid ghostwriter. Now I think she tried to do her best. I mean, I think that she's learning on her own. And again, just imagine. I mean, we're comic book fans, so if we went in, and I'm not saying she wasn't, whatever. But if they end up saying, "Okay, Jim, you're now going to run. You're the general manager of the Eagles." Well, I love the Eagles. Love football. Watch tons of football. I would think that I know maybe more than some people, but I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be the worst. I'd be overwhelmed. I wouldn't know what to do, and I'd start doing stupid shit. And the Eagles would not benefit. They would end up, and I'd get fired, and it would be the worst but if I went there and Howie Roseman said, somehow he saw me, he's like, I really like the cut of this guy's jib, and I spent the time under his tutelage, I bet you I would end up being somewhat decent, even though I went in with not many qualifications at all. So yeah, I think that that's the problem, and that's what I'm saying. Common said Jeremy Adams came from a deal, but so did Tim Sheridan. He did the same thing, but he didn't work out. It's because it's a different medium. Jeremy Adams, though, is a better storyteller. He understands that storytelling because a lot of these people from the animation and from movies, they don't realize that on a page, the character themselves is not going to play up the charisma of the character just by seeing them in motion or seeing them, or really with an actor. An actor really sells the character. You don't have to do, like if you do a Deadpool and it's Ryan Reynolds, his charisma is the character work. You like him immediately, and then you get more, you already have a base. On the page, though, you don't have that. And I think that there's people like, again, Tim Sheridan's Alan Scott book, which people went nuts about for, all these reasons. But the real legit problem with that book is it's a different kind of Green Lantern. And that was not any concern with Tim Sheridan. He just wanted to do his thing because I guess he wanted to win GLAAD awards and was not really any concern of him of introducing a character to people that they may learn something about the living flame. And even with things changed, it ended up being a wreck of a book that felt by the end that you really didn't get much Green Lantern at all. And it was, the pacing was off. The storytelling was really, really bad. A lot of times it made Alan Scott look like a complete moron. The things that he was letting go just because, it was trying to push the idea, oh, look, he was lost back in the day and he couldn't be accepted. And he loved this and loved that. But in the meantime, you do have to start with Green Lantern and then introduce the other things. Because again, where people get mad, I don't mind Alan Scott being straight, gay, purple, alien, whatever. I read books for good stories, and some things can be good stories, some things aren't. It would upset people who have an idea of what the character is from the past. I don't have that baggage. I don't end up really caring. And what I said at one point is people are like, this ruins the character, this and that. I'm like, so what? We're not going to get another solo book for another 70 years because we haven't got much of Alan Scott anyway. If it would have been done well, it could have ended up giving you a book. Again, if it was Mark Miller, if it was named, Robert Kirkman, some big things, I'm sure they would have figured out a way to make it very good, and you would have been convinced that it was a decent enough thing. But not Tim Sheridan. Tim Sheridan was just, and Tim Sheridan had already shown his true colors of being an awful writer with that Teen Titans Tower, whatever. Also, one of the worst Shazam minis that really knocked Shazam back like years. It was really bad. Whew. Secret Six equals another attempt at JLQ. I don't know. Again, if JLQ would have come out, I would have read it and reviewed it, and I would have seen if it was good or not. I think that the characters could be interesting, and Secret Six, and I would ask Fiend Machine if they're reading Secret Six. I'm reading and reviewing it. It's not good. One of the biggest problems isn't that it's, quote unquote, like a JLQ. The biggest problem is the characters are insufferable in it. They are not fun. They are not well done. They end up arguing. It's not like they're walking around slapping each other's asses in the shower all the time. It's that John, I said I can only use one word for him in that book. He's insufferable. He is a jerk. He is crazy, just bad, like bad in a way that you would not want to hang out with him, that he is just an asshole. Then you end up having a moment between Dreamer. Dreamer, again, is Nicole Main's character. She played him in the show, or her in the show, then comes in and ends up where any power you want Dreamer to have, you just slap it on Dreamer. She could do whatever the hell you want her to do because nothing is set. Again, something where you need somebody to come in and say, listen, I know that you're, biased for the character. It's a character you played. But in the meantime, you're doing worse than they did at the beginning with Superman, where anytime they need him to have a power, he had it. And then you have Jay Nakamura with one of the worst, secret gossamer, which again wasn't Nicole Main's thing, but going with it. And he's a backstabbing bitch. Like, you can't even like anybody except Black Alice. If you have read the book, there's probably 2 people who have read the book, might be common sense of me. But if you read that book, Black Alice is great. She is hilarious. And if you think that the idea of a book is going with like, ooh, we're going to push this or whatever, there's legit at a point where Deadshot's there, and he was dressed in the first issue. He ended up impersonating a guard. And he tries to explain it. And legit, Black Alice says, oh, I was wondering why you were dressed up so gay. And I thought, you know what? That's hilarious. That's pretty funny. And she said a couple things in it that's like that, but I think she's really good. Yeah, Titans Academy was hard. And you know why, JK, and this is my opinion, is because nobody was there. Again, Tim Sheridan introduced 7 trillion characters, and then didn't have any room for any of them, then made the regular Titans look like assholes, then ends up where, oh, we're going to have it, and then the Red X story came in, which made no sense, but that was editorial forcing that in, but making them, said to him, just make it work. There was no way it was gonna. Then you have these, you couldn't do anything in that book. That book was so overcrowded. It was like one of those Japanese subways, and the editor wasn't there to push people in with that board. You need somebody, that's what the editor should be doing, pushing people into that subway with a board. That book was nonsense. It drove me nuts because some of the characters seemed like they could be cool. And boy, it was bad. It was so bad. Writers nowadays all want to fundamentally change the character. Bruce's dad cheated on his wife. Joker was trained by the same person as Batman, etc. All too much. Again, from talking to some people, that might be from higher up. And here's the thing. You tell me the amount of people, like we'll guess or we'll think about the idea, the amount of people who get a book because they pitch something. There's nobody. Tom King at one point said that he pitched that what's it called, Rorschach book. But usually even Tom King, one of the bigger guys at DC, unfortunately, but he says, oh, they asked me to do a Supergirl book. Oh, they asked me to do this. They asked me to be on Wonder Woman. There's never a pitch. Jeremy Adams has talked about having a pitch for Wonder Woman. They told him, you couldn't be on Wonder Woman. We don't take pitches. So if you think that somebody who gets assigned a book, then later suddenly they're like, oh, yeah, do this. That's what they're doing. I don't think they're like, hey, you're going to do this book and then just leave them alone. Yeah, do whatever you want. There's a lot of times I think that they don't help the writers, but they say, oh, by the way, because, yeah, that Red X, I did talk to Tim Sheridan at one point, and I said, that made no sense. He said, he didn't really even know the character. They told him to do that. There's been a bunch of things. Tom King has said, anytime things go wrong with Tom King, he'll bring up the point that he didn't do it. But Harley and Booster Gold, he didn't have them as characters in the whole Heroes in Crisis. Those were assigned characters. Well, that's the whole book. So, yeah. Yeah, it's this back and forth, but I don't know that, Chip Zdarsky, I think that they probably said, hey, do this. He's a little bit bigger and on Batman, but I do think that a lot of it is the deal. And so why did they let Fitzmartin do what she wanted? Again, I'm going to ask JK, what do you think she wanted, because DC wanted him to be bi. That was not her idea. And they told her to do it, and then she didn't know what the hell to do. So she just went and wrote it. Again, people don't get, the books. They're not pitching things. They get them assigned. That's something that DC wanted them to do. And she did it. But keep doing DC podcasts. I listen every week, except Marvel. I think Marvel sucks. Yeah. Yeah, we do that. I want to pitch Teen Titans East, DC. No, we don't want you to write that. Yeah, they wouldn't. And what'll be worse, common sense, is they'll say, we don't want that. And then suddenly they'll end up where somebody else will be told to write what you just pitched. Not exactly stealing your idea, but they'll get a deal. Though I would never write a Teen Titans East, because as a reviewer, I would tend to get right away, the tagline in a review would be Teen Titans Least. Right? If it wasn't good. But we'll go back to these solicits. We'll get, this is already going on way too long again. And again, even saying like the editors make the people do things, so they are doing something, but then I think they're left to their own devices and they just have to write it. And I've even told when Steve Orlando was on Wonder Woman, there were a bunch of things. I told a story that he told me at one point was that a editor walked past something and saw a variant cover of Phantom Stranger and then said to Steve Orlando, you're putting Phantom Stranger in your next issue that you're, at the point writing. And he's like, that doesn't even make sense in the story I'm writing. And he was told, if you don't do it, we'll find somebody else who will. So he had to make it work. It didn't work. And I know that story and he told me that story because I reviewed the issue and I said, this don't make no damn sense. Like, what happened? What happened in this? And a bunch of other people gave it 10s. And I talked to him about that as well. And he said that most of the writers that he talks to, the people who constantly or consistently give 10s or 9.5s for every single book, they mean nothing to the writers. They look at that, real writers. Some of them, they end up being hacks and but the idea is they obviously don't really read the books or understand them. They're just slapping a score to look positive. And he did tell me that. But next one is a book that I really do like, Resurrection Man, Quantum Karma, #5, written by Ram V, with art by Anand RK, and also being read by Jim W. Jim, I'll go by. It's 5 of 6, it says there. I was hoping that they would extend it. $4.99, August 6th, as Shesha pursues him to the end of the universe. Resurrection Man must figure out a way to stay one step ahead of the former ally. Well, spoiler, with him caught in the crosshairs, it may take the help of a literal human target to help him evade capture. Will Christopher Chance be able to make our hero, save our hero from himself? And will he again murder Guy Gardner? Guest starring Christopher Chance, the human target. I think that alludes to something that I have already guessed on that I thought was a thing. We will finish up by giving, the bigger books here. Superman #29, written by Joshua Williamson, art and cover by Dan Mora. $4.99 comes out August 27th. Superman and an impossible ally search the future for the lost legion of superheroes. What happened to it? And can it help in the battle against Darkseid's Legion, or Absolute Legion, RIP Legion of superheroes? So we're starting to combine that Absolute stuff too soon. I don't know why. I don't know why you want to do that this soon, but what they're doing. Next is Action Comics #1089, Mark Waid writing, art by Skylar Partridge. It is $4.99, August 13th. Now that Superboy has made his Metropolis debut, a hero from the past reemerges to take him down. One who sees him as reckless hindrance to human progress and a threat to all. For the first time, the Boy of Steel faces off against an opponent with powers beyond his. The cover looks like Etrigan? What the hell is that? I don't know. I was going to say Ultra Humanite, but that was just me. There's a character that I would like in the Absolute deal. Little Ultra Humanite would be pretty cool. And as I'm saying this, my page is crashing. Superman Unlimited #4, written by Dan Slott, art and cover by Raphael Albuquerque. And if you're interested in seeing what Slott has, he did have the first 10 pages of his first issue in a free comic book day, and I think people were pleasantly surprised. the ones that I talked to. The issue's coming out this coming up week, so that's kind of cool. I'm looking forward to it. $4.99 US, August 20th. He's blocked me, but I don't care. I just want good books. It's a big day for Jimmy Olsen as he sets up shop in the new Gotham City branch of the Daily Planet. His first assignment, learn what has turned Superman into an uncontrollable monster. I have read the first issue, and I thought at the end of the issue, some people are going to not be very pleased, and this kind of hints to it. And why? Do the combined forces of the heroes of Gotham even stand a chance against the version of the Man of Steel? And what is Bruce Wayne doing a continent away in Emerald City? Maybe, visiting the Wizard of Oz. All this, and back in Smallville, John Kent begins training for the ultimate challenge, a way to combat the deadly effects of kryptonite. Guest starring the Birds of Prey, Night of the Superman Bat. So we get a little John Kent in there. That might be cool. We will go with more of the Summer of Superman, Supergirl number 4, written by Sophie Campbell, $3.99, August 13th, in the aftermath of Escape. Here's the thing. Now I'm not. Because lo and behold, I said it at the beginning of the show, and I actually am on record of recording before these solicits came out. It is Les Lallar. I ended up calling it. Boom. Hashtag Jim's right. In the aftermath of Escaped Kandorian, Les Lallar's rampage through town, Supergirl learns there's more to Midvale than meets the eye when Lena drags her to a secret club she never knew existed. Midvale, like her alter ego, may seem mild-mannered, but there's something special about it. Out from under Superman's watchful eye, Kara is ready, and now my thing just crashed. Great. Supergirl's doing stuff, people. She's doing things. Oh, the stupid bleeding cool site crashed on me. I'm getting back to it. Jesus criminy. Yeah. Les Lallar, though. Out from under Superman's watchful eye, Kara's ready to let loose no matter the disastrous consequences. Girls' night out. It's too quick for that. I talked about the Kelly Thompson deal. Come on, Sophie Campbell. Search and rescue, it says. Then you get Crypto, the Last Dog of Krypton, number 3, written by Ryan North and art by Mike Norton. I will go on record. I think that this might be a little bit better than the One World Under Doom, and more in the, the range of Ryan North, more in his, strike zone here. It is $3.99, August 20th. Crypto, the Last Dog of Krypton, has seen some of the worst of what Earth can offer. I hope in this one he rips the throat out of Mongol again and escaped it with his life. And yet he still hasn't given up hope. Alone, Crypto wanders through a forest in the depths of winter until one day encounters a young girl who is also lost. At least they can be lost together. This sounds a lot like and I didn't like it, but people did, that Swamp Thing story by Tom King. But humans aren't as equipped to survive the wilderness as dogs are, and there will come a point when the girl can walk no more, and a strange visitor from another world will be her only hope. I hope it's like pot-smoking Martian Manhunter. That'd be awesome. I'm looking to see how many more we will do here, because we are going towards a deal. We'll do a couple more. Because why not talk about Wonder Woman number 24. Wonder Woman number 24, written by Tom King, art by Daniel Sempari. It is $4.99. Terrible. August 20th. Wonder Woman's appearance on Mouse Man's Island has led to disastrous consequences for our hero. Now, remember you ended up having Kite Man. Hell yeah. That's his catchphrase, right? And then you end up where you get Wonder Woman. Her catchphrase is, no thank you. Mouse Man's going to be like squeak, squeak. And that's my thing. And she becomes a fugitive on the run. A fugitive again, because that's all Tom King can write. With locals too afraid to speak, will she ever get the answer she needs to find Etta and Emil? Can she do it with all the screaming baby strapped to her back? That's right. The young daughter of Wonder Woman is along for the adventure. Mice have ears. They do. They also have mouths and noses, right? I hate mice. They also have bones that separate, and it allows them to walk on. This is my fear of mice. It's not that I think the mouse itself is going to hurt me. I'm a grown man. It's that I'm going to step on a mouse with bare feet, and I'm going to feel those bones separate and squish, and it's going to weird me out till the end of time. It weirds me out so much. Trinity, daughter of Wonder Woman, number 3. I thought that Lizzie was very cute in one of the first 2 or so things in the backup of the Wonder Woman. And then I got annoyed with her and also that the incessant just arguing between John and Damien is the worst, and I think Tom King writes the worst Damien I have ever read. And if you disagree with me, if you know Damien, and I say this, you've probably heard me say this before if you've listened, but you ended up having the Black Mercy. And Tom King said, Black Mercy doesn't work on Damien because he doesn't have any dreams. You know, the Black Mercy that they put on, say, Doomsday. Doomsday has dreams. They're not great. They're killing Superman over and over. Everybody has dreams. And Damien certainly has dreams. You are a hack if you think, basically saying he has no soul at all and is just a psychopathic, insane person. It's the worst. It was the worst. It really got me. Here we go. $3.99, August 13th. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Trinity is about to learn the lessons firsthand after a disastrous meeting with her mother in the past that leads to death at the paws of the fearsome Cerberus. Will our hero have what it takes to learn from her mistakes and save her Wonder Woman and one of the missing corgis? Because remember, this whole thing is about her saving the super corgis. Third time's the charm. Yeah, it is. It is. I'm going to end this with Justice League. Justice League Unlimited, number 10. And I'll go through some titles, just I won't go through the whole deal. Justice League Unlimited, number 10, Mark Waid, Dan Mora on art. It's $3.99, August 27th. The Quantum Quorum of Time Traveler Refugees has issued its warning to the Justice League. Apocalypse is coming. But just as Jor-El's cries fell on deaf ears of Krypton, will the people of Earth be prepared to take drastic steps to save their world? It all comes to a head as the chaos continues, and one leaguer is put to the ultimate test. The march to apocalypse continues. So that'll be the deal. We also end up having Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong 2. I thought the first one ended up with a fizzle and wasn't really that great anyway. You also have things, well, I said we would stop. Let's read Nightwing. Nightwing number 129, written by Dan Waters, art and cover by Dexter Soy. Nightwing. It is a nightmare. $4.99, August 20th. Nightwing must overcome the creature that has taken over Titan's tower and rescue his allies from its fifth dimensional prison. But trapped in time warps and bad dreams, those who escape may be changed forever. Nightmare in the clutches of a monster. That sounds street level to me. Also, that Titan's tower already haunted from night terrors, and I guess they forgot about that, or it might be that. Maybe the tower itself will fight back because it was haunted by a spirit that took over the whole thing in night terrors. And one of the most ridiculous things, would it be funny if you ended up getting that? You end up also having, say, Batman and Robin. This is the last one. Batman and Robin, then I'll look at the chat and then we'll get out. Batman and Robin number 24, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. I have said and gone on record that I think that in September we may actually reboot to a number 1 and still have Philip Kennedy Johnson on it. It's possible, but lo and behold, the Memento story ends in August. So there is a clear transition point that you could do a new number 1, which I do think Philip Kennedy Johnson should have got originally anyway. But Batman and Robin number 24, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Miguel Mendonca, $4.99, August 13th. Remember, you must die. Long ago, a young Bruce Wayne first encountered the monstrous Memento in the winding streets of old London town and narrowly escaped with his life, but also with terrifying questions he never managed to answer. Now with Gotham City in flames, will Batman finally find the key to stopping Memento once and for all? Will he actually admit that it might be supernatural? Or will his son suffer the fate he fled all those years ago? Like the George Harrison tribute song, too. John Lennon, that had the 3 remaining Beatles performing on. The Memento storyline comes to a thunderous conclusion. Don't miss the explosive conclusion to Memento. They end up with these solicits. They used to have the classics at the end. Like they'd say, Gotham will never be the same. Batman's world will be rocked to its core. Oh, my God. They seem to, in these, just repeat like one of the last sentences. I don't know why you're repeating things. You have to end with that oomph. Also, Catwoman number 78. It's a special oversized issue, and it says the contract on Catwoman's life closes. I think that book's done, or at least, Torin Grumbach. That book hasn't been good. That book is boring. And Birds of Prey, that book is gone. Harley Quinn, anybody reading that? The best is in this, because I refuse. People have heard me read the Solicits. It drives me nuts, these Harley Solicits. But I did look at this earlier. Elliot Kalin, does anybody even know that this run is going on? And then at the end, it ends up where you have the fourth wall breaking Harley Quinn telling you to solicit. And then at the end says, hello, is this thing on? Does anyone even read these things? Very, very meta. And the thing is, I don't think anybody's reading that book. Aquaman #8, that continues. I hope that's really cool. And New Gods #9, another book that I like, but needs to be less lore. It's coming out this week, and we go back in time. It's Ram V, really getting his jellies, doing that lore, which some people like. I tried to explain it at the end of this podcast, this week's DC podcast, that I said, it's fine. If people enjoy Ram V giving you deep dive lore into New Genesis and Apocalypse, the whole, Fourth World, all that stuff, right? Or the play there, the New Gods. That's fine. But I never in my mind before reading that book thought that I wanted to, I didn't go, there's things out there. I didn't go seek it out. I didn't care. I didn't really, it's nothing I'm really concerned about overall, is the whole, Apocalypse Genesis thing. I know what I know, and that's kind of enough for me. So when you say, oh man, but it's cool. I could have learned this stuff before. It's not what I'm here for. So I tend to I kind of want that story with Mr. Miracle and Orion and Barda, and it was pretty cool. This new god, now that's interesting. And it got put on the side. But that's it. Green Arrow #27. I think that ends a story. That ends the Where is Roy Harper, or the Bad Moon Rising, whatever the hell the story is. But I think that will restart as something, and we'll just go on from there. There's a lot of others, but we've been talking way too long, and I'll check out the deal and go with we're doing this. Here we go. Never Let Gotham Girl. We're back to there. I gotta find now where I left off. There are many members of the Bat family. Gotham will be fine. The thing is, though, will they be? Because half the time, what are the members doing? At one point, you saw in this Batman and Robin, they're like, oh my God, find your brother. Damien's kept. Then they disappeared. I don't know. And Secret Six is really rough. It's true. Brandon JK said, my headcanon is still Golden Age, that the original Batman was the escaped slave who worked to help other escapees. So Gotham wasn't better before Batman. No, they keep got it's that. And is Bruce Wayne money better to serve Gotham than this? We keep getting these things, and it's again, what you're doing is not just discussing what would be reality. You're discussing something that will never happen. The idea, okay, well, from now on, everybody, no Batman. Bruce Wayne's just going to start, making some things and spending money. It'll be great. What a book. But yeah, Conduit, mainline Conduit's armor and powers came from kryptonite. It can rival Absolute Superman's armor. That'd be cool. Orca Cyborg Superman would be awesome, like Orca. Well, a 10 would be an absolute perfect book for me, with not one plot, character, pacing, editor, colorist, or artist error. I don't agree that's what a 10 is. I think 10s are very personal. You can read a book that you might not have the greatest of art, but it is something that is the best thing you've ever read. And again, my 10 wouldn't be yours, JK. And yours isn't mine. I mean, if me and you ended up where you read something and your pinnacle's an 8.5 and I gave it a 9.5, that just means we both like it. But how about this? If it was a story about a guy with 5 kids, one who's autistic, and they do that, that's my family. And now I end up reading something that is very reminiscent and very personal to me of the family. And while you still say that your 8.5 is a 10, and then I read it and I have a personal connection in with it, I might like it better. And it wouldn't have anything to do with the idea. And also, I would ask you, what do you do? Do you go half art, half story? Because I don't. I'm telling you, when I review a book, I don't sit there and calculate, well, I give 5 points for art, and I'm going to give that a 3.2. And then I go with, mine is the gut feeling of what I think at the end of what the story is and how the comic is. And a lot of the times, a gut feeling would be something like Aquaman this week that I thought was so much fun, and I really liked it and gave it a 9. But I couldn't. You tell me, well, the art that I don't. It's a combined thing for me. I've mentioned that since we started. Like, there are sites that actually give 1 point for lettering. I'm like, really? Because the only time I notice a letterer is when they mess up. It's like an umpire. Sometimes they do good jobs, and then says, I agree on Red Canary. Plus, she was so arrogant about it, talking down to Damien. Yeah, she's just not a good character. Justly Gold, how Red Canary is different from Red Arrow, Jim? How? Because Red Arrow actually is part of an relation and wasn't just somebody who said, oh, I think I'm just going to do this. There's so much more difference. Also, I kind of know what Red Arrow can do. Red Canary doesn't have a power set, doesn't have a skill set, never mention anything. Just, I want to be like Black Canary because I hit somebody with a guitar, and then doesn't even have guitar as their main weapon. It's an awful character. It's a nothing character in a sea of nothing characters. The idea that people will say, oh, well, just imagine the idea of saying hey, the Bat family's so big. This Green Arrow family is got like 800 people in it, and they're just letting a girl who randomly showed up because she hit a guy over the head with a guitar. So what's the Just League Red thing that is coming? Well, we talked about that earlier. It's just nonsense, but I don't know what the overall thing is. For the Peg Comics is doing to themselves. Many of these writers just aren't fans who love the characters. It's a job, and that's how they treat it. Again, you want to get people who care about the characters? Then do a thing where, hey, who has a pitch for Wonder Woman? And then you get somebody who says, oh, I've been wanting to tell this Wonder Woman story for 10 years. Not, hey, I'm going to sign you. Wonder Woman, I don't even know her. Well, do some research. I'll give you some trades, but you don't. Like Power Girl and Leah Williams. She never said that Power Girl was one of her favorite characters. She said that she was assigned the book and then started reading past issues and then came into a crossroads that then she said to the editors, Brittany Holzer probably, hey, where do I go? What continuity are you doing? They're like, what continuity? What are you talking about? Just tell your own story and have fun. And that's what you get then. The worst part of Leah Williams telling the story is that she went with their advice. She should have then took it upon herself to actually nail out a continuity for Power Girl. Secret Six is a mini, so who cares? It doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, like Resurrection Man's a mini and it's Dark Label, so it doesn't matter. So who cares? It's some people will care. Secret Six is then we're back to the JLQ. Do you think Ram V wanted it extended? He seems like he does better on shorter runs. Really? Because JK, what happened to that Swamp Thing? I think he writes shit and he doesn't tell. Say he does do better on shorter runs, but I think he likes it. He told me specifically he wants to have a book that's 100 issues. That makes no sense. He's like, I don't even want it to even tie into each issue. I just want a 100 issue run of doing stupid stuff. But yeah, I think that his big move is I'm not going to tell a full story so that they have to extend it like that Swamp Thing. That ended up not being great. Combining means people who read one or the other really don't need to read either. Ram V, now I'm lost. I'll get done with these, but I hate to leave like the chat things hanging. Ram V, Mark Wade Adams, PKG Williams moves current DC narrative. Yeah, PKG doesn't. PKJ, I mean. He's kind of, again, one of the bigger problems is Philip Kennedy Johnson does not sell books at DC. Batman and Robin is doing terrible. I think that they didn't help him out. And also, is there not, I mean, I went through most of them. I didn't go through, but is there mention of his House of L book? Because that was supposed to come out in the summer. And in my calculations, August is the end of summer. It got delayed, but I don't know. Maybe it was. Now that the site crashed again. If people saw it, they could. Because again, but Philip Kennedy Johnson is a guy that people like, but I don't think he's that much of a concern to DC. I think Williams' time is come and gone. He couldn't do the big thing. His getting tired. His what's it called? His events were not good. And Ram V, I mean, the stuff that he's doing is kind of side stuff, but yeah, and Bleeding Cool, that it crashed again. I hope DS will tell good Dan Slott. I think he's going to do his own thing, and people will be Mad Mouse Man is Silver Age villain. Why Tom King resorts to it? Because that's what he thinks people. That's why he had Kite Man. This is just another Kite Man, and he's gonna think that he can elevate it. And hey, Mouse Man is just Lizzie was cute, became arrogant. And you're right, he does a terrible Damien. Damien is the most hopeful Robin. He comes from despair. That's the thing. He's fought against that. And again, I've said this on things. How about this? You have the Black Mercy, and just lo and behold, Damien kind of wishes that Talia and Batman were together, even though he knows that wouldn't be a good thing. But that would be something that a little boy who's gone through a lot of those things might want. Or he wishes that he always didn't have to become Robin. He loves being Robin. He wants to be Batman. But maybe he would wish that Bruce, that we had this in some stories. You almost even had it in his deal in Philip Kennedy Johnson's Batman and Robin. The idea that his dream would be that he was just little Damien, whose mom and dad ended up owning a corporation, and they ended up doing this, and they ended up, or maybe he dreamed that he got to meet his, father's side of things, grandparents. Maybe he dreamed that Alfred didn't get killed. There's a lot of dreams that you could come up with. And really, what would be the greatest is in that issue, Tom King, though it wasn't his idea, again, talking about editorial and up above and all that, they made Tom King kill Alfred. Maybe he can, vindicate himself a little by showing that Damien really would like Alfred alive. And Tom King can maybe give the wink, wink. Listen, I would too, but I was told to kill him because of 5G that never happened. So yeah, there's a lot. You end up where Common Sense then says, now I lost track of it. If Damian Wayne doesn't have dreams, that means he didn't grow up at all since he started living with Bruce. That's the thing, though. He would have had dreams before. Little kid, you don't have to grow up to have dreams. I mean, little kids can dream they want to be a fireman. That's the hope of the future. You have dreams of hoping for things to happen, or hope. Even a little kid who dreams to be an adult someday, and nope, nothing. I think Dick taught Damien hope. Yeah, I think he had it. It's just, he is an upset kid who thinks that he has to outperform everyone because he was a villain, because he's the son of Bruce Wayne, Batman, and so he thinks he has to do a little better. JK said, I enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong versus Justice League, but it did end on a low note. I'm not looking forward to it. I haven't even decided if we're even going to talk about it on the podcast. We probably will, but I have a theme song for it. That was pretty cool. Yeah, and I'm not a big Godzilla fan, but he says Kiddo is a big Godzilla fan. So that's because there's a lot of Godzilla books, a lot of wacky ones. Eek, that sounds like Damien going back to League of Assassins. Yeah. I forgot Green Arrow is still, that's the problem. They didn't give a #1 to Chris Condon. And that's what usually it is. It's like, what? There's still a Green Arrow book? Yeah. What? It's Chris Condon? Yeah. I mean by name Jim like Justice League and Justice League Dark. Okay. I know that they had the Justice League West. And I get it. You have to have that damn Justice League Detroit. I also saw Red Arrow as reflecting part of his rage, like the Red Hood. Yeah, weird. I don't hate Red Canary. I do think she needs more development as a character like Barbara Gordon. She did become Batgirl without Batman's permission. But the thing is, she also had a connection. This was just a girl, I think, in Seattle who was in just sitting there in a shop. She was buying a guitar. That's not quite Barbara Gordon, who wanted to be a cop, ends up being turned down because her dad kind of finagles things, and then she also has the skill set that she's been training and then becomes it. She wasn't just at a bodega and ended up hitting, which she did do in the year 1, where she ended up taking some guys down, but there was a little bit more of a background. But Common Sense, like there is JSA, JSTRK, yeah. And Williamson is good when he's passionate, but he loses interest relatively fast. He just gets very scattered. Again, I think that he is very into the G.I. Joe stuff. And I think he's allowed to tell a story that he always wanted to tell, or he's doing things in, combination with some people, but I don't know. And I do think his Superman's great. I didn't like his Flash run much at all. I thought it fell apart. Most of the arcs started good and then fell apart, and that's what I think of him in general. He ends up where things start. They veer off into a weird thing where you add things that you don't need at a point when it's way beyond adding, and then at the end it's all convoluted and it ends up just finishing. And I thought that's what happened even with, I mean, just even the idea, it wasn't him, but it was such a typical deal of the Dark Crisis then turning into Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. You ended up having, oh my God, Pariah, this, that, and the other. Oh no, now it's Slade, and now it's not. Now it's Nightwing. Everything got all crazed up. At one point, it was this Dark Army. Oh my God, and then they're kind of not a thing. And for your monarch, when it be an astronaut, I want it to be an archaeologist. That would have been mine, and my dad wouldn't have yelled at me when I told him in my dream. Damian literally beat up Tim Drake when they first met, Jim, because Damian thinks he was entitled to be Robin. It's not just that. It's not, and it's not just that. He also thought that he had to do that to prove that he was better because he was replacing somebody. There's more layers than just, I'm going to be Robin, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. It's because he's smaller, because people think that they think that it's nepotism, that if he wasn't Batman's son, he wouldn't get that. He beat him up because of that too. I saw that differently. Common sense, I saw it more as he beat up Tim Drake because that's what you do in the league. You take the place. And again, that's part of it too. But I also think that it was that he had to prove already, if I'm taking over, I'm better than you. I'm going to beat you up because I deserve it. And it's just one of the things. And again, Damian's changed since he's been with Batman, but it's not like he didn't have dreams. Even if the dream was to beat up Tim Drake, that's still a dream. Again, if my dream is to blow up the world, it's not great, but it's a dream. Doomsday has dreams. Mongol has dreams. Everybody, but not Damian. Not having any dreams, bad, good, or indifferent, means that you have nothing. You are an empty husk. Yeah. Remember Damian had to murder many ninjas just for the right to meet Bruce. Yeah, it's the same with Cass, especially in that New 52 deal that they ended up redoing some of the things in the Batman and Robin Eternal. She would wake up and have to kill like 100 people just to eat breakfast. So, yeah, that. Again, one of the things, though, is, and Damian is. He's an abused, the kid was raised to be like a vessel. And that's from family. The idea that his mom killed him or had him killed, like, that's some crazy shit that you're going to be really insecure and really upset. And his mind would be going. But again, would it be that he wished his mom, told him a bedtime story, that Talia showed him at least a little more, of a soft hand at points? It was ridiculous. It just was the idea that Tom King thinks, oh, Damian, he's the piece of shit, miserable, yell at everybody guy, so he wouldn't have dreams. Again, not realizing that you've had awful villains with Black. Anybody can have a dream. It doesn't mean that your dream is good or bad or whatever. It's just what you want and what you hope for, and that's the fun of the Black Mercy. And he really missed out on what would have been some great character work. Some great character work where you would see that Damian might actually like, oh, look, his get this. I mean, it's in a book that you had them later on. They're older. But how about this? My dream was that John didn't get aged up. That I actually was able to keep doing Super Sons because that's when I felt most comfortable. That would have been awesome. And they didn't do it. JK says, Tom, one-dimensional king. Yeah, it was just ridiculous because Damian's the dark one and John's the light one. The idea that in the future they're still bickering as if it was the beginning of Super Sons where they're bickering. And finally, by the end of that first run, they ended up being friends, best friends, but they weren't for a while there. They were yelling and screaming. John was just so nice, but Damian was pissed. He was upset. Also, when Damian gets together with John, especially at the beginning, there was that play of like even Damian being upset that he thinks Batman's better than Superman. So there would be that thing, and John would be like, "Well, my dad's Superman." Like he's just so nice. But Tom King can't even work anything through. It's just the one thing that he wants to do. It's always misery. It is always misery. So. I've looked at, not fully read the first issue of Trinity, and it's wacky. Pariah's in it. There's some weird things, and I don't know that Tom King knows that things have happened with these characters. They're very odd, but I'm going to get out of here. I hope everybody enjoyed our talk. It got heated, and we went, 2 hours and 18 minutes. It feels like we went longer. Whew, it feels like I'm beat up. John could give as good as he got sometimes. Yeah, it was. But again, if you do look back at the original reviews, of Super Sons, you'll see me there. And a lot of people were very tired by that. They just kept bickering. It just was a thing. Most of the reviewers were saying it as well as me. But again, I said I think the character work is great in the Super Sons. I don't think the stories were that great. The idea that you go back to Kid Amazo twice was ridiculous. Even that idea of him setting up his family and they ended up having that TV show thing. Then you go to Cracklow, then you have all those. The stories themselves weren't what made that book great. It was the character work and the interaction between them, in my mind. But yeah, yeah. And Fear Monarch says he's going to go back looking at the first 2 hours he missed. There's a lot of yelling. But I think that we'll end with a song that I had this week. And it's weird when I end up, we're doing all this. And there's times where I'll say, hey, I'm going to get going. And then we go another hour or whatnot. But when I'm actually really done, I must do something because my dog sits here with me while we're doing this. And when we're done, we're going to go for a walk. And the minute that I'm actually really ready to end, she always knows. She gets up and walks over and kind of like puts her head on my knee. I'm sitting there and puts her head there. And I'm like, she just seems to know. I don't know how. It's very odd. She's very intuitive. And luckily she's waiting. She probably has to go really bad. It's probably the deal. But I'm going to play a song that started out as an Aquaman song. It started out for this week's Aquaman. It ends up talking about the blue. Somehow it turned into what ended up sounding a lot like, say, a Blur meets Oasis, maybe even meets Radiohead a bit song, like a weird Britpop song from the 90s. But I think it's pretty cool, and I'll see what you think. I'll end with that if I can find it here. I'm getting there where I have some songs here. I've actually been remiss. I like to throw in... I like to throw a lot of songs in for our podcast. Eric did it as well. I don't think his were very good, but, I can say that now because he quit. But I do like to do it, and I've been remiss. I haven't done a lot, but I'm trying to get back to doing that. I'm too busy doing dirty songs. And there are some people. I don't know if Edward is still in the chat, but he actually joined me last night on my Sus Records side of things where I had a dance party with all the Sus songs. It was pretty fun. And reviewing New Gods, we are reviewing New Gods. The last issue, I don't think we did because the person who reviewed it with me ended up not being able to. But also, I think I've mentioned to you before, I think New Gods has been on our Patreon spotlight each time. So it's not on the regular show. It's actually an exclusive to the Patreon. Each week, I say this every podcast, but each week we have 2 books. I'm going to be doing it pretty much right when we're done here. After I take my dog for a walk, I'll put up a poll on our Patreon, and the 2 highest levels on the Patreon, they get to pick what books we talk about exclusively on our Patreon spotlight. I do believe that will probably lead to Superman Unlimited by Jen Slott not being on the podcast this week. We do review it, but it'll be on the Patreon, and usually those reviews are over an hour long per review. We tend to deep dive more when it's on the Patreon, but that would be the deal. I don't know, that Sinister Sons ended up just failing in my mind. That thing fell apart. It didn't really make sense. But it was okay. I had a couple songs for that. But like I said, I think all of the New Gods issues are actually on our Patreon spotlight. So they're there. It's just on the Patreon. And there's a link if anybody's interested to go to the Patreon. We have a bunch of things on the Patreon besides the Patreon spotlight. We have reading clubs where we talk about issues, one after the other of a Walking Dead Deluxe. We have a Hellboy podcast. We have a Mark Miller podcast. We have a Events podcast. We have a Book of the Month. We have an Elseworlds podcast, a Year One podcast. There's usually, the things that I do here, I did mention to somebody who said I was miserable. I did say that what you get here is like 1% of anything that we do. We have a bunch of podcasts. We have the normal Marvel and DC podcasts. We have an exclusive indie comics podcast on the Patreon. We have manga shows. We have a bunch of things like that. Usually, I think it ended up, I did look, I could even look now. because we started, you could do the math. I'll tell somebody out there who's good with math, you can do it, because I'm going to tell you, since 2019, I think it is, I'll tell you how many episodes we have done on our Patreon. I'm looking right now, trying to find it. And this is no joke. I can 4,513 episodes. So 4,513 comic book podcast episodes in 5-6 years. That's what we did. So there we go. But I'm still looking for this song. Still doing that. This is why now my dog's getting mad. Like, I thought we were done here, and now you keep trying to pull up these things. And Common Sense asks, Jim, what are your thoughts of Dave Wildghost? He is Megan Fitzmartin's editor. Both Tim Drake and Dark Crisis Young Justice, he enabled Fitzmartin's ideas. I just think that he's not that good. And those books weren't good. And legit, the Dark Crisis Young Justice, like, at that point, you're past the idea of, hey, Tim Drake, he's by. All right, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But we're past that at that point. And that Young Justice Dark Crisis book was one of the worst things I ever read. And Common Sense, damn you for bringing that up in my mind. I ended up reading and reviewing all those. It was freaking terrible. It was so bad. And yeah, I don't think, if you do go and look, you can probably find, like, there's some editors. And it's one of the things that I start mentioning now, Guy Yaya, and on our Patreon, he's the one who suggested that we talk and mention the editors, and you start seeing some patterns. And Brittany Holzer's the worst. That pattern is straight up. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's how many episodes. Now, again, combined with that, just to go with the deal, because I do like this. This is where we'll go with the DC Comics podcast. I have the app where it has all the things and it'll give you stats, right? So the DC Comics podcast itself, where we are doing episode 589, but legit, we've done 808 episodes. And because of the length of some of the things, you can also do the math of this, that we've done 808 episodes, and an average for each episode average is 201 minutes. So we end up doing a lot. At some points, the podcast was 13 hours a week, and sometimes it wasn't. But yeah, we have 808 episodes, average of 201 minutes each. And then I'll go to the Weird Science Marvel, where we have 732 episodes, and they average 58 minutes a piece, because we don't do as many books there. We can't find as many to like. But the DC thing was what started. So, if my calculations are right, adding all those up, I think I don't know that there's more than like 10 that I wasn't on. But I do think that an average, let me add this up in my mind, I think we've done 7 million podcasts. That's what the average comes out to me. Common Sense says, Jim, you're not the only one who read Dark Crazy Young Justice. I read it too. That comic gave me scars that won't fade. It was so bad. Whew, and there was a lot of bad going on anyway, and that was the worst. That was really, really bad. But thanks, everybody. Thanks, Common Sense, for the super chats. That is so nice of you. And overall, again, I'm going to go off. I'm going to walk my dog. I'm going to be back tonight with the Best of show, and then tomorrow night, and that's at 7 tonight, Eastern Standard Time. And then tomorrow at 9, we'll do a preview show talking about some of the things. I'm sure I'll lose my mind again about Nightwing and the Captain Hollow as we go through that. But this is a song. Originally, this is what happens too. Originally, I'll start like, I'm going to write a song for Aquaman, just a throwaway thing we put on I think it's neat to have songs for each thing. And then at the end, I'm like, I didn't really mention Aquaman. It's more of a standard song. We'll see if you like it. But this is it. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and Yule is here. I didn't even notice you, Yule. But Yule says goodbye. Goodbye, Yule. And we will talk to you all later.
Sometimes there's trouble and it's suddenly all around. You thought you were good, but eventually you're gonna drown. Sometimes you have to jump into the deep end to get the answers you can't find. sometimes you're so down below the surface. There's no way to see the sun. And when you finally lose your purpose, that's when it feels like you're finally done. You're going out of your head into the blue. Should be somewhere instead, but what can you do? There's no way I'll ever stop looking for you. You're going out of your head and into the blue, into blue, into
Nobody knows just how you feel. Your head's still filled with all those squeals. Surrounded by friends who don't know your face. Party animals don't know their place. Who else could you possibly be when you kick that baby into the sea? You're Batman as fuck, crashing out of buildings in your bad dump truck. You're Batman as fuck, burning all that money like a stupid schmuck. You're Batman as fuck. And we like you because you're just dumb fun. We like you because you're just dumb fun. You cut off hands, but you won't use a gun. Look at all the party animals run. You're Batman as fuck, crashing out of buildings in your bad dump truck. You're Batman as fuck, burning all that money like a stupid schmuck. You're Batman as fuck. Run. Run.